You know what's a weird movie? Anastasia. And not just because it is very clearly a Don Bluth movie attempting to imitate the Disney Renaissance, it's weird because of how very, very ahistorical it is. To be fair, Anastasia Romanov's body wasn't found until 2007, so the film going with the urban legend of her secretly being alive after the Russian Revolution isn't that bad. On the other hand, the movie portrays the revolution as being the work of Grigory Rasputin, an evil sorcerer who sold his soul to Satan for power and mind-controlled the Bolsheviks into rebelling. The film portrays the overthrow of Nicholas II as a terrible tragedy and portrays the Tsar as being a kind, friendly father who is beloved by his people instead of, a bloodthirsty mass-murdering tyrant who fully deserved every bullet. Like, the revolution was bloody and I'm not very fond of the Bolsheviks, but I sure as hell am not going to cry over the death of the Tsar. Nicky Romanov was a dictator. We don't use the word dictator very often when talking about historical figures for some reason, but most kings historically were dictators. What else do you call an unelected leader who holds nearly unlimited power? Atrocities that happened under Nick Dose include mass killings of Jewish people that claimed 2,000 lives, something he privately supported, striking workers being massacred by his Imperial Guard, Russia going to war with Japan so he could conquer Korea and Manchuria, his soldiers carrying out mass rapes of civilians during said war, and Russia being dragged into World War I, resulting in starvation on the home front and 1.7 million young men dying in battle. Like, killing the kids was a pretty shitty thing to do, but to be fair, Nick murdered a lot of other people's children first. Hell, we should probably lay at least part of the blame for Anastasia's death on the Tsar's feet. His children wouldn't have been killed if he wasn't such an evil cunt. Anyway, it's really weird to watch a movie where the title character's father is brutally murdered, and then walk away thinking, well, I mean, he had it coming. Admittedly, it's not like downplaying historical atrocities is something unique to Anastasia. I like Our Flag Means Death and Hamilton is a guilty pleasure of mine, but both of these works brush over the atrocities the people their characters were based on committed. Still, something about how this film downplays Nicholas II's crimes really rubs me the wrong way. It opens with Maria talking about how great things were before the revolution, calling Russia an enchanted world of elegant palaces and grand parties. Except, it also mentions it's 1916, i.e. the height of World War I, a time when things were pretty fucking horrendous in Russia. Horrendous for the common people dying in the trenches, that is. The parties celebrating 300 years of authoritarian rule were probably pretty nice. The praise of the Tsar is mostly just the first 7 minutes of the movie. Afterwards, it becomes a fairly average coming-of-age romance, which admittedly works pretty well. Meg Ryan and John Cusack have pretty good chemistry, and the animation is solid. Still, this film's opening got me thinking. A lot of media we consume is really friendly towards monarchies. Like, most people like freedom and democracy, but fantasy media is filled to the brim with dictators. And we don't question it generally, because they're the good dictators. And I'm not saying fantasy writers are evil for having kings. I've written things with kings before, because it's a genre staple in fantasy works, and it's simpler a lot of the time to just go with what's expected. Writers don't choose to have monarchies because they're bootlickers, they do so because it's simpler. But still, the older I get, the more I dislike the idea of kings, and dislike them being played straight in fiction. An unstated assumption in most works featuring monarchies is that this is good, that dictators are good, that power should be held by a select few, royal bloodlines, that the people should not have control over their government. But I want to set that assumption to the side. I want to judge fictional rulers and see if they deserve to be in charge. Not because of the divine right to rule or any of that bullshit, but because they are actually qualified. If only there were a set of movies about members of royal families I could analyze. Oh look! Disney princess movies! Let's do that! In this very long video, I'm going to watch every single Disney movie featuring a monarch and rank them on how competent said monarch is. I'm also going to look at movies like The Lion King and The Emperor's New Groove that feature monarchs other than princesses to be thorough. And I mean, how long could that take? It's not like there are dozens of different films of varying quality for me to watch, ha ha ha. Disney as a company owns a lot of subsidiaries that make movies with princesses, but I'm not going to be ranking those films. This list won't feature Princess Leia, to give an example. But if you're curious, I don't like royalty, but I'll give her a pass because A, she kills fascists, and B, she kind of stops being a princess after A New Hope on account of the whole... Also, as the title implies, this will not be on a grade point A, B, C, etc. scale. The list will start at unironically based, then ascend through actually decent, fine I guess, thin ice, and come to a stop in off with their head tier, reserved for monarchs who are so terrible they need to be assassinated pretty much instantly. I'm also adding a too stupid to rule tier in the middle for characters that aren't necessarily evil, but still shouldn't be given power under any circumstances. Now, some of you are probably thinking, weren't a vast majority of the people executed via guillotine during the French Revolution commoners? Like, although the execution method has admirers in leftist circles for being used to kill Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, wasn't it primarily used as a form of oppression against the working class by an authoritarian government? And don't guillotine jokes just feed into a support of the carceral state and the death penalty? And to that I say, I chose this title because it was funny. One more thing before we get into this. We need to define what counts as royalty. I think the best definition for royalty is someone who inherits a position of power via birthright and or marrying someone who inherits a position of power via birthright. So Moana is a princess even though her dad isn't called a king because their rule is hereditary. But the king of the forest from Bambi isn't a king because that's just his name. And Kerchak from Tarzan isn't a king because although he is a leader, it's unclear if his position is hereditary. Also, I guess Zeus and the Olympians and Hercules are technically royalty, but I'm ignoring them because I feel like gods are their own separate thing. Stay tuned for the sequel to this video, which fictional gods are deserving of worship. That was a joke, I'm not doing that. Let's start with the first Disney movie, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Dwarfs with an F. This movie takes place in an unnamed kingdom ruled by an unnamed evil queen. She took control of the throne after her husband died and acts like an asshole to his 15-year-old daughter, forcing her to work as a scullery maid. Question, what the fuck is a scullery maid? A scullery maid is a low-ranking servant working for the cook. It's difficult to judge the governmental structure of this kingdom because there only seems to be 3 humans living there. The queen does seem to have a lot of power though. The huntsman follows her orders and it's implied he'll be killed if he refuses. Although it seems that the queen can't publicly execute Snow. Note that she has the huntsman kill her in secret out alone in the woods. She also kept Snow around as a maid for years instead of just snapping her neck. The queen took over when the king died, and the people would probably be pissed if she ordered the execution of her stepdaughter, implying some limit on her power. So let's stop beating around the bush. The evil queen is going straight to the guillotine. She's an awful person, and besides that, she seems to be a really crappy ruler. She spends all her time fretting about a child being prettier than her. Except, Snow White isn't prettier. The mirror specifically says that she's better because of her gentle grace. She's the fairest in the land because she's nice. Speaking of which, I don't know if Snow White would be a good ruler. She's a child, admittedly, but goddamn she is naive. Her stepmother is so suspicious in her hag form. How did you fall for that? Wait, is the old hag potion reversible? If not, then the queen is painfully dumb. Actually, why didn't she just give the ugly potion to Snow White? Anyway, Snow is dumb. Snow is characterized as being naive and friendly. There's a scene where Grumpy walks into a door and she says, "Oh no, did you hurt yourself?" And at first I thought she was being snarky, but no, she was being serious. Snow is so nice and friendly that she comes across as really, really weird. She sees a house in the woods, barges in, and just starts cleaning. Who does that? She acts as a sort of mother figure to a bunch of old guys, which is bizarre. Snow White is nice, but she's painfully naive. Do not let her have political power just because her dad was king. Of course, to go with Snow White's princess, we also have a prince. His name is never mentioned. He's just some prince of a foreign kingdom. At one point, he's described as charming, but that's the official name of the prince from Cinderella, even though that prince is never called charming in the actual film. Merchandise calls him Ferdinand, so I'll call him that. Ferdinand is barely a character. He shows up at the start just wandering through another country alone. He says hi to Snow White, she runs away screaming, but then he sings a mediocre song and she falls madly in love with him. He shows up again at the end to make out with a corpse, which is a thing that normal people do. Not even a little peck on the cheek. He full-on makes out with Snow White. Probably had some tongue in there too. At the end of the movie, he takes Snow White back to his kingdom, implying that there is no one in charge of this kingdom anymore. Or maybe Ferd annexes Snow White's homeland. I don't know. This guy creeps me out, so I'm tempted to put him in guillotine tier, but to be honest, he belongs in a new tier I'm creating that I'm going to call Too Boring to Have Opinion. To be honest, it was a chore watching this movie. I appreciate its place in animation history, but its plot is paper thin, the protagonist is dull, most of the dwarfs are forgettable, and the music is mediocre. It was very important for the industry, but that's the only nice thing I can say about it. It's surprising how much of an improvement you see when going from Snow White to Cinderella. Sure, there was a 13-year gap between films, but it's still astonishing. The animation is far better, the music is actually good, and the protagonist feels like a person! It's not a big difference, but having Cinderella snark at Lucifer and attempt to defend herself to Lady Tremaine does a lot to make her feel like a real person. She's still a nice animal lover, but she has depth to her character. That's not to say that Cinderella isn't a very flawed movie, though. The romance is somehow worse than in Snow White, and about half of the film is a bad Tom and Jerry cartoon. Still, watching this movie immediately after Snow White makes you appreciate the improvements. If I watched this after a Renaissance movie, I would probably call it terrible, but I haven't watched them yet. Let's talk about King Charming. Is Charming his last name? Probably not. He's the ruler of what is specifically called a small kingdom. He wants grandkids, so when his son returns from doing something somewhere else, he decides to hold a ball, so his son will fall in love and get married. He only gives the castle staff a few hours warning for this massive party, which is kind of a dick move. To his credit, the king wants a romantic marriage for his son, not a political one. There's a mention of a Princess Frederica Jane de la Fontaine attending, but he lets his son marry Cinderella, an ordinary noblewoman. Not a commoner, mind you. Her stepmom makes her do chores, but Cinderella is part of the nobility. The king demands all eligible maidens in the country attend the ball. This suggests he holds a lot of power, but there doesn't seem to be any consequences for disobeying this order, given the fact that Lady Tremaine leaves Cinderella behind. So, I always thought this film was kinda dumb because the prince couldn't remember Cinderella's face, but that isn't what happened. It's his dumbass father's idea to use the glass slipper to identify the real princess. And Cinderella doesn't put the slipper on, she pulls out the other slipper, which didn't disappear at midnight like the carriage, for reasons that I don't understand. The king is introduced as an angry, screaming asshole, furious that his son isn't married. The first thing he does is chuck his own crown through a stained glass window. He stays angry and temperamental throughout the film. When the Duke tells him that the prince's love ran away, the king loses his shit. He tries to kill the Duke with a sword. He repeatedly tries to chop the man's head off for giving him bad news. So yeah, the king should be sent to the guillotine. As for the titular Cinderella, sure, she can be queen, I guess. She's nice and hardworking. You know, it's interesting that Snow White and Cinderella are both servants. There's this weird undercurrent in these stories, that it is wrong for these girls to do manual labor. Not because manual labor is bad, teenage girls working as maids were a common sight historically. It's bad because their evil stepmothers make them servants instead of living the privileged lives typical of their classes. It's bad for a princess to be a maid, but it's fine for a commoner to be a servant. Am I reading too much into this? Yeah, probably. Cinderella goes in yeah, sure, fine, whatever tier. Rounding out this film's royals is Prince Charming. He is in this film for 30 seconds. The romance between him and Cinderella isn't very good. Also, Cinderella says twice that she doesn't know who the prince is after meeting Charming, implying she is very dumb and didn't realize he was the prince when they danced together. Put Charming in boring tier. Anyway, that was Cinderella. On to the next Disney movie, Alice in Wonderland. That isn't the poster for Alice in Wonderland. What the hell is Cinderella 2 Dreams Come True? Oh no! You can't make me watch the Disney direct-to-DVD sequels! They're all so bad! Please! No! So anyway, I watched Cinderella 2 Dreams Come True, and it was not very good. The animation and acting aren't awful, but they're clearly different from the original, and it's a bit uncanny valley. The music is atrocious, and the writing is incredibly dull. I'm pretty sure the film was originally made as a couple of pilot episodes for a TV series that wasn't picked up. It's structured as a series of 3 stories the mice are telling to the fairy godmother, who just lives in the palace now? I was under the impression that she was some sort of magic being who only appeared when needed, but now she just hangs out in Cinderella's attic for some reason. Story 1, Cinderella has to put on a banquet to celebrate her returning from her honeymoon. She doesn't like it because she has to wear a poofy dress and can't open the curtains and has to eat bad food. This segment is so boring. And yet, somehow, it is the most politically important piece of the Cinderella canon. Cinderella spots some of her commoner friends outside the gate and, hold on, pause. Since when does Cinderella have friends? I thought she only hung out with mice. Anyway, she attempts to invite them to the ball, but Prudence, the head servant, says no, because commoners aren't allowed in the palace. This confirms that the kingdom from Cinderella has a rigid class system that will eventually boil over into a violent revolution that claims the lives of this film's entire cast. At the end of the segment, Cinderella invites all the commoners to the banquet, throwing away tradition because it's stupid. This is a way bigger deal than the film makes it out to be. A new princess announcing that commoners will attend royal banquets is a radical thing to do. Cinderella just took steps to overthrowing the feudal system and will presumably take more steps in the future. I'm surprised there wasn't massive pushback from the nobility over her eroding their power. I mean, it doesn't happen because it's a mediocre, sappy be-yourself movie for children, but yeah, in real life, this would be a big deal. To my surprise, Cinderella is kinda based. Bump her up to actually good tier. Story 2 is fairly bland. In it, the fairy godmother turns Jacques into a human. Also, this movie sometimes calls Jacques Jack, which annoys me. Also, in the first film, the mice spoke in broken English, but in this one, they speak full sentences half the time, which is weird. But half the time, they have the old broken English, which makes it weirder. Human Jacques helps Cinderella put on a festival. Why do these people have so many goddamn parties? The festival has electric lights and a Ferris wheel, meaning this film takes place in 1893 at the absolute earliest, which feels wrong. One of this segment's main jokes is that a human woman wants to fuck human Jacques, and she's fat, and that's bad, and that's the joke. I was gonna make fun of this film for having a human woman be into a mouse, but I mean, Jacques passes the Harkness test. Jacques passes the Harkness test! The mice are sapient beings with human intelligence! This changes everything. Lady Tremaine having a mousetrap and keeping a cat in the first one? That isn't normal rich lady stuff. That's attempted murder. Cinderella owns a bunch of mice as pets, and they help her with chores. Are the mice slaves? This series doesn't just have a class system. It has a race that is treated as vermin, whom it is legal to kill. The fat lady says she hates mice. That isn't a phobia. That's bigotry. Cinderella is the only one in this world who treats the mice like people, which is good, but even then, she doesn't treat the mistreatment of mice as the most vital problem to solve in the kingdom. Take away her based award. Mice liberation now! Maybe only Cinderella and the fairy godmother can speak to mice, but they still wear clothes. It's obvious they're intelligent. The cats have human-level intelligence too, now that I think about it. I don't have a good segue out of this bit. Third segment is about Cinderella's stepsister, Anastasia, no, not that one, falling in love. I have nothing important to say about it. Lucifer dresses up like Bob Marley. At the end, Cinderella says, "Dreams really do come true. This is not a good movie." Now, you've probably noticed that I haven't mentioned the prince once in this segment. That's because he continues to be a bland non-character. Yes, they created a sequel and made no attempt to fix the original's biggest failure. Brilliant filmmaking! Cinderella 3 is actually good, though. I mean, Dreams Come True was so bad it'll make any halfway competent film seem amazing, but no, I genuinely enjoyed Cinderella 3: A Twist in Time. In this one, Lady Tremaine steals the fairy godmother's wand and uses it to travel back in time and make the prince fall in love with Anastasia. It fails because it isn't true love, even after she transforms Anastasia into Cinderella. This film gives the prince a personality, Cinderella shows a wide range of emotions, the romance is somewhat believable, the king isn't a dick, Anastasia has a good character arc that ends with her betraying her mother, the film has an actual plot with stakes and a villain, the animation is passable, the climax is directly stolen from Shrek 2. All in all, this is probably the best Disney Cinderella movie. Definitely better than the second one. Also, the prince can talk to the mice but thinks it's weird that he can understand them. I don't know how that affects my mice are second-class citizens rant. Say it with me now! Yeah, the Queen of Hearts sucks. Also the king too. He gleefully sends innocent people to death row to please his tyrant wife. He tries to give Alice a trial admittedly, but he still doesn't care that it's only a show trial. Both of these people suck, and also so does the movie. I don't think Alice in Wonderland is a very good movie. I was going to skip this one initially because it doesn't have any kings, but as I was getting ready to judge Pocahontas, I remembered that Disney did feature a Native American chief in one earlier film. The movie Peter Pan features a Native American tribe. Not like any specific tribe, just a sort of vague mismatch of racist stereotypes, because the play was written in 1904 and adapted in 1953. The tribe isn't named in the movie, which is good, because their name in the book is a racial slur. A racial slur for black people for some reason. Anyway, Tiger Lily. Does she count as a princess? She's described as a princess in the original book, but to be fair, most Native American tribes didn't really have European-style hereditary leadership, and the whole princess thing is a fetishized racial stereotype. But then again, that kind of means within the fiction of the film, she probably is a literal princess, because in case it wasn't clear, the depiction of Native Americans in Disney's Peter Pan is very, very racist. Tiger Lily is a hostage the white protagonist rescues, who falls in love with him, a la many a shitty dime novel damsel. I can't really say much about her as a character, because she does not have any lines. Peter Pan is a very misogynistic work, and that misogyny mixes with author J.M. Barrie's racism to create a character who makes me cringe every time she is on screen. Also, this film repeatedly uses a slur for Native American women that I am not going to repeat. And yet, Tiger Lily is somehow not the worst depiction of a Native American in a Disney film. The worst is her father, who... Oh, Jesus! Is that what he looks like? He looks like a Muppet from an alternate universe where Jim Henson was a Klansman. I guess I should talk about the plot of Peter Pan, or at the very least the parts involving the natives. After meeting the Lost Boys, Nerdy Kid says he wants to see a real Aborigine. So, the Lost Boys decide to go capture a few natives. First off, that's a hate crime. Secondly, Aboriginals and Native Americans are not the same thing. The kids march off, chanting, "We're off to fight the Indians." Their words, not mine, carrying sticks shaped like guns. At this point, I should probably note that the Native Americans in this movie aren't real. And not just because it's a movie, it's all but stated that Neverland is just a dream the Darling kids are having. The Native Americans are imaginary fantasy creatures, just like the mermaids in Tinkerbell. That explains why they are little more than racist stereotypes. That's all they know because it's 1904 and they're rich British children. The Lost Boys aren't actually going off to commit hate crimes, they're playing cowboys and Indians with fake guns. The movie isn't trying to be culturally accurate. But that doesn't make this film less racist. Like, the natives are stereotypical because the kids only know racist characters? Well, congrats, now the kids watching this children's film also only know racist characters. And I mean, wouldn't it be more interesting from a writing perspective if the Native Americans were more than one-dimensional bad guys? It would be interesting if the Darlings learned Neverland was more complex than their playtime before bed. Anyway, the Lost Boys go off to play cowboys and Indians, only to be ambushed by the natives, who actually want to murder them for realsy this time. The chief attempts to burn them at the stake because he thinks they kidnapped Tiger Lily. And I mean, murdering children without trial on circumstantial evidence is an evil thing to do. You're probably expecting me to put this chief in decapitation tier. Yeah, fuck that. I refuse. I understand he's an evil authority figure, but fuck this. I'm not going to dignify the evil negative Native American stereotype character with my dislike. That would be like if I watched Birth of a Nation, then talked about how all the black people in that movie are evil. Yeah, no shit, it's a movie made by a bunch of racists. Tiger Lily's dad is removed from the list out of spite. Back in the plot, Peter saves Tiger Lily, so they make him an honorary member of the tribe because racial stereotypes, and then... oh god. And then we get a musical number called What Made the Red Man Red? It is very racist. In it, the natives sing that they have red skin because they're always blushing. Except real Native Americans don't have literally red skin, and Tiger Lily doesn't have red skin, and I can see why they cut this song out when they show the movie on TV. Also, the song mentions the first Native American as having lived 1 million years ago, despite the first Homo sapiens evolving only 200,000 years ago. As a commenter on this song's Genius Lyrics page pointed out, this means that Peter Pan takes place 800,000 years in the future. Let's watch something less racist next. I could watch Return to Neverland, I guess, but that movie thankfully doesn't feature Tiger Lily, so it's irrelevant to this video. I guess I could also watch the 6 different Tinkerbell films, as they probably feature some sort of fairy queen. But, counterpoint, I don't want to. These first 3 Disney princess movies have a lot of overlap in terms of plot. Fairy godmothers, kissing comatose girls, a blonde princess in a blue dress, bland princes, being loved by animals, evil stepmothers, evil witches. They kind of blend together in your mind. It's interesting the parodies of Disney movies, like Shrek, Enchanted, and some of the dialogue in Frozen, seem to be making fun of these movies specifically. The shallow relationship where the princess gets married after a 2-minute conversation doesn't happen as badly in the Renaissance or Revival films. Singing woodland animals, evil stepmothers, fairy godmothers, these things really haven't been done since 1959. But they're the things that show up in parodies. It kind of reminds me of how the stock anime parody in American comedies is to make fun of Speed Racer's English dub, which came out in 1967. But a 2021 Rick and Morty episode parodied it in an episode inspired by Voltron, a show that came out in 1984, in an episode named after Evangelion, a different show which came out in 1996. Parodying this film is shallow and old hat at this point, is what I'm saying. That isn't to say Sleeping Beauty is good, though, because it is not. The film begins with the entire kingdom invited to the birth of Princess Aurora. Well, I say whole kingdom, but the narration says of high or low estate, and later Maleficent says nobility and gentry, so it's less the whole kingdom and more the nobility and bourgeoisie. Also, the nobility exists, that's cool. At this party, King Stefan marries off his infant daughter to Philip, the son of the king of a neighboring kingdom. Political marriages are a useful negotiating tool, but I question the point of this one, considering the fact that Stefan and Hubert are already best buddies. Also, it's weird to marry off your baby, Stefan. They wait until she's 16 to do it officially, but still, that's just a baby! When Aurora and Philip are teenagers, they reunite and don't recognize her. They fall in love after talking for a few minutes because somehow it took Disney literal decades to write a good romance. Anyway, both of them freak out about their arranged marriage because they'd rather marry a random stranger they talked to once. Back at the palace, Stefan worries about how his daughter will adjust to her arranged marriage, which pisses off Hubert and causes him to hit a foreign king with a fish. They laugh it off though, so it's not a big deal. Philip explains that it's the 14th century and arranged marriages are lame. Ultimately, this plot point goes nowhere because they're both royalty, so it's fine. But honestly, that's disappointing. I think it would be more interesting if there wasn't an easy out. If Aurora, this girl raised as a peasant, was forced to choose between becoming a princess and staying with her true love. That would give some much needed agency and character development to the titular Sleeping Beauty. But Aurora ends up being this film's greatest flaw. She's the least developed Disney princess, even when compared to her 2 predecessors. Philip is a bit better than his predecessors, but he's still a fairly flat character. He does fight and kill Maleficent, which at least makes him plot important, but he's still as bland as unbuttered toast. But, of course, Sleeping Beauty isn't about the young couple with the personality of saltine crackers. It's about the fairies! The Kingdom of Whateverburg have a close relationship with 3 powerful fairies. These fairies take care of Princess Aurora and give her magical gifts when she's born. Flora makes her pretty, Fauna makes her a good singer, and Merryweather stops Maleficent from murdering her. Maleficent also gives her a gift, like she curses Aurora to die when she's 16, But before that, she makes it so she will grow with grace and beauty, loved by all who know her. And do you know what that means? King Stefan's regime is propped up by fairy magic. He has a pact with 3 very powerful supernatural entities who warp reality to make people love his family. The citizens in this movie love Aurora and are overjoyed about her birth, but how much of that is their own emotions, and how much of that is them being enchanted to love her by fey magic? What if Aurora was evil? What if she was a violent tyrant, but because she was beautiful and loved by all thanks to fairy magic, people didn't overthrow her? The implications are terrifying. Think about the implications. Are you frightened? So, King Stefan used fey magic to stay in power. That's unnerving. But also, he's bad at using fairy magic. He didn't invite Maleficent. He was rude to one of the Fae, thus giving her permission to curse his daughter. And yes, Maleficent is an asshole who was looking for an excuse, but he gave her the excuse. His daughter almost dies because of an easily avoidable public relations snafu. Also, when he finds out that his daughter will be combed by a spinning wheel, he orders that all of the spinning wheels in the kingdom will be destroyed. That is massive government overreach. Fuck you, peasants who want to make clothes. You're on thin fucking ice, Stefan. And those fairies he's friends with put the entire country in an endless coma. And Maleficent says that they would have let it go on for a century. A country being cut off from the world for 100 years, then just popping back without any relationships with other countries, without any technological advancements, that would be devastating. Certainly more than some random princess dying. Your fairy friends tried to destroy the kingdom, Stefan! Now then, let us watch the next movie on my list. Disney Princess Enchanted Tales, Follow Your Dreams, Keys to the Kingdom. This one is gonna be bad, isn't it?
It was.
So anyway, in this one, all of the royals go away to a royalty conference for a few days, leaving Aurora in charge. Ah, yes, one of those famous royalty conferences that all the kings go to. Hubert has to give a speech. So you know how Aurora was kinda hesitant to be royalty in the original because it's such a big change? Well, in this one, she's super excited to be a princess because she just wants to do a good job. Aurora's first task is to sign a 5-foot-tall stack of paperwork her father normally has to sign. Her advisor tells her to just sign it, but she insists on reading each and every document, which takes all night. And this is portrayed as her trying to be a good leader, but that's a dumb use of your time. Like, delegation is a thing. Governments don't function well when everything is ran by a single figurehead. It's better to have a trusted advisor in charge of traffic laws, for example, and delegate authority to them to make decisions. Aurora should trust what her advisors tell her to sign because they know more about their jobs than she does. Like, obviously there should be oversight, but the princess shouldn't be personally approving every parking ticket. They had parking tickets in the 14th century, right? Next, we get the King Solomon come before the monarch and ask for problems to be solved thingy. She deals with a property line dispute, something so entertaining to see in this animated fantasy film. Meriwether ends up giving Aurora her wand so she can fix things with magic, and Aurora fucks things up. Like, really bad. A farmer says his chickens are stolen, so Aurora summons a bunch of chicks. The man says he'd prefer bigger chickens, so Aurora turns them into giant monster chickens that will certainly eat children. Then she turns the man into a duck, makes a bunch of pigs, and eventually just erases everything in the throne room from existence. Aurora just killed a man! She fixes it with magic, but that man was dead because she is so fucking stupid when she uses the magic wand. Aurora is too stupid to rule. So is Hubert. Philip is fun. Leah is a character who exists. Ultimately, the story ends with the Aesop that you shouldn't look for the easy way out and use magic to solve problems. Except, all of the problems in the original were solved by magic. And also the problem isn't that magic shouldn't be used, it's that Aurora is really stupid when she uses it. This movie is dumb. Aurora has no right to talk about the importance of hard work. She's a goddamn princess. She was given a kingdom for being born. Now, am I extenuating the negative? Of course I am. But again, implicit in all of these movies is one unstated assumption, that all of this is good, that Aurora should be placed in a position of power despite being unqualified because her dad was king. Disney princess movies, by their very nature, support the idea of the monarchy. This isn't a serious video. I'm being overly negative on purpose. But still, I think it's good to question the assumptions these films rest on. The Sword in the Stone begins with King Uther Pendragon passing away, leaving England without a king. A sword magically appears in an anvil, inscribed with the words, "Whoso pulleth out this sword of this stone and anvil is rightwise king born of England." First off, this movie's title is dumb. The sword is stuck in an anvil, not a stone. I mean, it might be poking down into the rock a bit, but it is primarily the sword in the anvil. Second, why are we letting magic swords choose kings? What authority does a sword hold? Strange swords popping out of anvils is no basis for a system of government. Supreme executive power derives from a mandate from the masses, not from some farcical blacksmith ceremony. Also, why didn't someone try to seize power after Uther died? Sword in the anvil be damned. Society abhors a power vacuum. So the premise of Arthurian myth is kinda dumb. I am surely the first person to make this observation. Anyway, the premise of the movie is that England is left kingless for years. And to quote directly, this leaves the country in a dark age, without law and without order. Men lived in fear of one another, for the strong preyed on the weak. And I just have to say that this quote really rubs me the wrong way. This film's opening argues that without an all-powerful ruler, society would descend into chaos. Crime would go through the roof because people are just wild dogs who need an authority figure to keep them on the leash. The only thing that can keep us safe is a dictator. And it needs to be understood. That is what a king is. Tsar, Kaiser, King, Emperor, they all mean the same thing. One man with all the power in the world. And isn't that just great? Like, I was joking when I got mad at Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella, but I am genuinely pissed off by the framing of this movie. Oh shit, I forgot my Santa hat. Anyway, I guess we should talk about Wart, the destined king of England. On one hand, he's nice, eager to learn, and stands up for Merlin to Ector. On the other hand, he's 12. With all the naivete and foolishness that comes with being 12. He could maybe be a king when he's older, but not now. But they just make him the king. He tries to run away because he doesn't know how to run a country, but they won't let him. Because, as the crowd says, Wirt pulling the sword from the anvil is a miracle ordained by heaven. And that's the missing piece of the puzzle, isn't it? The divine right of kings. The people in power deserve to be in power because it is the will of God, and thus their authority is unquestionable. To do so is heresy. In case it wasn't clear, I really fucking hate the idea of monarchies. This film is fine, it's just more explicit about monarchies being super cool than other Disney movies are. Fortunately, the people of England no longer believe in something as stupid as a king. See, the joke is that I wrote that line back in May, when, despite there being mass poverty in England, the British government spent tens of millions of pounds to throw this cunt a party, despite a majority of the country not wanting to do so, and then the police carried out mass arrests of protesters. Glad to see that the monarchy no longer holds any power. Here's hoping that Chuck follows in the footsteps of the first King Charles. Speaking of taxing poor people to make a jackass king rich. Robin Hood is a fictional character, but Richard I and Prince John are actual historical figures. Also, they're furries in this movie. Get it? Richard the Lionheart is a lion. And so is John, but not Maid Marian for some reason? Honestly, given the fact that their ancestor is Wart, I'm surprised they aren't all squirrels. Anyway, as I watched this movie, I realized something odd about the Robin Hood mythos. So, in the classic version of the story, King Richard is off fighting in the Third Crusade, leaving his loser brother John in charge. The people of England are crushed under the burden of heavy taxes, so Robin Hood has to steal from the rich to give to the poor. And in real life, John was a bad king. They called him Bad King John. John was so shitty at being a king that they created the Magna Carta. And honestly, permanently shrinking the power of the monarchy is the best thing a king can do, so really it's a good thing that John sucks so much. And do not at me about the complexities of medieval monarchies. I do not give a shit. Anyway, the real John did create new taxes when he was king, but only after Richard died. And Richard is still alive fighting the Crusades in most Robin Hood stories. And you know who else raised taxes historically? Richard I! Richard raised taxes to fund his crusade, then raised them again to pay for his ransom after he got arrested for being a jackass. Here's my theory. Richard is behind the high taxes, but Robin Hood, his loyal fellow crusader, is redirecting the people's anger against his brother. Robin Hood isn't the hero saving people from an oppressive government, he's a puppet working for their oppressor. And that's a cool fan theory that applies to a lot of Robin Hood movies, but unfortunately, it doesn't work for this one. Not only do we see John giving the orders for higher taxes, it's explicitly said that King Richard is off fighting the Crusades because he was hypnotized by Sir Hiss. So, for this film and later for Pocahontas, I've decided that I will not judge fictional rulers by what their inspirations did in real life. I will only judge them by what happens in the film. This makes more sense, I feel, because Disney movies are not even remotely historically accurate. This means, for example, I won't be calling the furry version of Richard a war criminal because the human version murdered 2,000 POWs. Still, the animated Prince John absolutely deserves the guillotine. He's greedy, cruel, and cowardly. Although, you know what's weird? Robin Hood doesn't really defeat him. He just waits until Richard comes back and makes everything okay again. And isn't that comforting? Sure, Prince John attempted to mass execute citizens who criticized his regime, but it's fine now because his brother is in charge. Now, does the king still have the power to kill anyone he wants? Yes. Is the royal guard still comprised entirely of men who will murder innocent people without hesitation if ordered to? Also yes. But it's fine. As long as Richard the Lionheart doesn't, I don't know, suddenly die of gangrene, thus handing ownership of the kingdom back to Prince John, everything should be okay. I would like to note that this film, unlike all of the others I have watched thus far for this video, featured a passable romance. Robin and Marian actually have chemistry with one another. Congrats, Disney! It took a while, but you finally accomplished the bare minimum. Is Maid Marian royalty? If she is, she's fine, I guess, bordering on actually good. Wait, is Robin Hood royalty because he marries Marian? Richard calls him his son-in-law. If Robin Hood is royalty, then he goes in actually good tier. Stealing from the rich to give to the poor, freeing death row political prisoners, and beating up douchebag cops are all undeniably base things. Although, I would again like to raise my concerns over Robin's friendliness towards the monarchy. Does his desire to steal from the rich also extend to his in-laws? I highly doubt it. Hey, remember the Black Cauldron? That box office bomb that was the most expensive animated film ever at the time? Had an incredibly messy production, came out 4 years behind schedule, and almost killed Disney animation? It's weird people don't talk about this one more. Probably because it's bad. Yeah, the Black Cauldron isn't great. The animation is good, and Taran is a good character on paper, but the film's story is bland, and the film lacks a lot of the charm, humor, and emotional depth of a lot of other Disney movies. Still, the film does have some good moments. The opening narration talks about a king so cruel, even the gods feared him. Since no prison could hold him, he was thrown into a crucible of molten iron. His demonic soul was captured in the metal, which was forged into a magic cauldron. Whoever wields this cauldron shall have the power to call forth an army of deathless warriors and rule the world! Wow, that's a cool backstory for our main villain. What's that? That guy isn't the villain? This is just the backstory for the film's MacGuffin? So here's a fun fact. This film's main villain was originally going to be Ron, the big bad from the Chronicles of Predain books the Black Cauldron was based on. But, partway through development, they decided to reduce Ron to an unnamed, unspeaking ghost in a pot. Instead, they promoted the Horned King, a minor character from the books, to the position of main villain. Why, might you ask? Because he had horns, and Maleficent and Chernabog had horns, and they were popular villains. Because the key to a good villain is horniness. And no, they couldn't just give Ron horns because reasons. Golly, decisions like this explain why this film was famously well received and is remembered as the pinnacle of animation. To be fair, while making the Horned King the big bad was kinda dumb, he's still the best part of this movie. John Hurt gives a terrifying performance. The Horned King is easily the scariest villain in any Disney movie. He's this ruthless, violent, manipulative lich who wants to become a god. He earns a well-deserved spot on the chopping block. And I guess Ron can go with him, even though Ron is just a ghost in this one. I guess I could just put a picture of the cauldron on the tier list. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. The movie also features a princess named Elwenwy, who is a scullery maid because someone at Disney really liked the term scullery maid. She's fine, I guess. She has more personality than her predecessors, but unfortunately she doesn't really do anything after escaping the Horned King. Oh, also the King of the Fairies briefly shows up. He dislikes humans because of all the war and shit, but helps the protagonist find the cauldron because the Horned King is just the worst. Also, he takes care of Terrence Pig, which is sure fine, I guess, if I've ever heard it. Now, I could recap the plot of this film to you, but that would force me to explain what Gurky is, and no one wants that. Instead, let's jump to an actually good movie. We have reached the Renaissance! You know, when Disney started making movies that were good. I forgot how good The Little Mermaid is. The jump in quality from the previous movies to this one is simply astounding. And not just in terms of animation and music, although those things are excellent in this one. This movie is good because it has complex characters who go through character development, and also the pacing isn't terrible for once. A lot of old school Disney fans are probably really mad with me right now, but come on. I'm not incorrect when I say that Ariel, Eric, and Triton are better written characters than Aurora, Philip, and Stefan. But in the name of being equally hostile to all Disney movies, I will now make a series of overplayed, poor-faith joking critiques of this film. Ariel changes her whole life for a guy she just met, what an idiot. Also, she is 16, and Triton is an asshole. Eric only dated Ariel because she's pretty. 7 vaginas, maybe more. This concludes me repeating decades-old complaints about a children's film. The thing about Ariel is, she doesn't run away because she likes some random guy. She runs away because she is fascinated by the human world and because her father is oppressive. Ariel's whole deal is that she loves human culture and wants to learn more about it. Her primary motivation is not to get with a guy, but to be a part of his world. If only there was a song about how she wants to be a part of that world. That would have explained things better. Also, even if she was motivated purely by love, and she isn't, but if she was, Eric is great! He has set a new gold standard for Disney princes. He's a laid-back, friendly, adventurous sailor who doesn't really care about being king. He treats his men with respect, and in his introductory scene, he saves a dog. It's cliché, but it works! He and Ariel have good chemistry. They fall in love because he likes the fact that she's quirky and weird. And then in the climax, Eric saves Ariel by killing Ursula, helping end Triton's beef with mankind through his heroism. As for Triton, yes, he is a dick, he is a bad father, and destroying Ariel's collection was cruel, but he didn't do it because he's evil. He genuinely cares for his daughter and is trying to look out for her. Remember, humans A, killed his wife according to the prequel, and B, regularly murder his subjects. His fear is justified, and when push comes to shove, he sacrifices himself to save Ariel. Triton is a bad dad, but he's trying, okay? And of course, Eric and the humans aren't evil. They don't know fish are sentient. And Ariel's youthful naivete, her ability to see the good in people, it ends this feud. At the end of the movie, humans and merfolk attend the wedding together, no longer enemies, because of Ariel acting as a bridge between worlds. Also, side note, that French chef continues trying to kill Sebastian, which is fucking ridiculous. Ariel has definitely explained to him by this point that Sebastian is her friend. This man is trying to kill a royal diplomat and retain her to the queen at the queen's wedding! How is this man not in jail yet? Why is he still around in the second one? So, anyway, Eric and Triton are pretty good leaders, I would argue. You'd think I would put Ariel in Too Dumb to Rule tier because Ursula is very, very obviously evil, but I don't know how I feel about that. Ariel doesn't take Ursula's deal because she's dumb. She takes it because she's a teenager, preyed upon by a manipulative monster during her lowest moments. Ariel signs the contract right after Triton destroys her shrine. It's a dumb thing to do, but I don't think she's an idiot because she made a mistake immediately after a traumatic experience. This isn't Snow-taking the apple level dumb, it's ordinary human level dumb. And also, everything would have worked out if Ursula hadn't cheated. Also, Ursula was queen briefly, and I don't feel like I have to justify putting her in decapitation tier. So yeah, Triton, Ariel, and Eric are all flawed leaders, but they're good people deep down and learn from their mistakes. Plus, they bring an end to the feud between humans and mermaids, something I presume will not be undone immediately in the direct-to-DVD sequel. What do you mean they immediately undid the ending of the last one? What the hell?! So the sequel begins with Eric and Ariel taking their newborn daughter, Melody, to meet with Triton. Then Ursula's crazy sister, Morgana, shows up and threatens to kill Melody unless Triton gives her the trident. Morgana immediately gets her ass kicked and runs away. But, fearing that Morgana will come for Melody, Ariel decides to do the only logical thing. Build a massive wall around the palace and make sure no one ever tells Melody about mermaids existing. Somehow, no one ever does. Also, they make Sebastian Melody's babysitter, which kind of goes against the whole keep her from knowing fish can talk thing. And that fucking French guy keeps trying to kill him, apparently daily, for 12 years. Get a new cook, Ariel! To be fair, he's trying to kill Sebastian for ruining his cake, but come on! This is clearly racially motivated. Are they still eating fish? The first movie made a big deal out of Triton hating humans because of fishing, so you'd think they would stop, but it's never brought up, and Frenchie trying to kill Sebastian is treated as a joke. Honestly, this is a fucked up thing that shows up in a lot of animated movies. Like, if you establish in your world that animals possess human-level intelligence and the main characters aren't vegetarians, what the fuck is wrong with your protagonists? I'll keep them out of guillotine tier for now, but if they do eat fish, then the entire Little Mermaid royal family is going straight to the block. And yes, I know crabs are arthropods, that was a test. Don't you feel dumb now for rushing down to the comment section to make fun of me? So, surprise, surprise, Melody is intrigued by the world she is forbidden from being a part of, and decides to run away and become a mermaid. Ariel's kinda dumb for not seeing that coming. Melody, not knowing that Morgana is evil because her parents never told her jack shit, makes a deal with Morgana. Let this serve as a lesson for all the parents in the audience. Tell your children about spooky evil sea witches, or someone else will. So, in case it wasn't obvious, this movie is a very blatant rehash of the first one, and yet, it is so much worse! I don't care about Melody's plight even slightly, and I think this is because of a few small changes. First off, no part of your world. That song carries the first film, and the second one does not insert its own equivalent. Without it, the emotional core of the movie is missing. The movie also spends very little time on Melody exploring Atlantica, compared to all the time of Ariel exploring the surface in the last one, making her love for the undersea world come across as flat. Finally, and this is a big one, this film fundamentally fails because Ariel isn't an asshole. There's no big moment where Ariel and Eric smash all of Melody's possessions. There's no abuse severe enough to justify Melody wanting to run away and never come back. No heightened emotional state to justify her making a deal with the devil, and because of that, Melody comes off like an idiot. Anyway, Melody steals Triton's trident from Morgana. Melody saves the day, blah blah blah, film over. Now that I think about it, giving the trident to Ursula in the first film was a dick move on Triton's part. Understandable, as he did it out of love, but he's still a bad leader. I'm sending him up to thin ice. At the end of the movie, Melody suggests they tear down the wall and let humans and mermaids be friends. The ending of this movie is just Ariel and Eric deciding to stop doing the dumb thing they did at the start of the movie. I can't decide if Melody falls into too dumb or actually decent, so I'll split the difference and put her in fine, I guess. Her parents were pretty good in the first movie, but pretty shitty in the second one, so I guess they average out to being mid. The third Little Mermaid movie, Ariel's Beginning, begins with Ariel's mother Athena being killed by pirates. Okay, solid start. This gives a good justification for Triton's hatred of humans in the first one. Then, because Athena liked music, Triton decides to ban all music in Atlantica. What? What? Yeah, Triton's a dick in this one, banning one of the most common forms of artistic expression because you're sad about your dead wife, boo-hoo, is a fucked up thing to do, and he enforces this ban through state violence. Flounder and Sebastian are arrested for playing music. This is, let me check my dictionary real quick. Authoritarian as fuck. Triton is a brutal tyrant in this movie. Honestly, I wonder if things would have been better under Ursula, considering how petty and stupid Triton is in this movie. This film's villain, besides Daddy Dictator, is Marina Del Rey, Ariel's governess, who wants to replace Sebastian as Triton's chief of staff. To accomplish this, she exposes the fact that Sebastian runs an underground music club. And she is portrayed as being evil for doing so, and she is. No one likes a snitch. But, isn't Triton the bigger villain in this situation? He's the one who made the law, he's the one who enforces it, but the film still treats his authoritarianism as just being misguided grief. I'd make a joke about how Coco is a ripoff of this film's plot, but at least in Coco, it was just one grumpy old lady who disliked music. It wasn't a violent authoritarian dictator banning music nationwide for petty reasons. Jesus fuck! Triton is awful in this one. Off with his head! Also, let's talk about Marina's plan real quick. After Ariel frees Sebastian from prison, Marina decides that the best way to keep hold of her job as chief of staff is to murder Princess Ariel? What? How would that accomplish anything? Why are there trains in her fantasy sequence? How does she know what trains are? Anyway, at the end, Triton apologizes for being a brutal tyrant and decides to allow music. But not human stuff, because he's still an authoritarian at heart. And even if he's acting nice at the moment, that doesn't change who he is deep down. And it doesn't change the fact that kings like Triton should not be allowed to exist. Because as long as that power exists, so does the ability for evil men to abuse it. By the way, Athena goes in boring tier and so do Ariel's sisters. Now, you might be wondering, am I going to watch the Little Mermaid TV show? Fuck no! Beauty and the Beast. An enchanting romance of a young woman and a violent, abusive asshole who kidnaps her and keeps her prisoner. Is that criticism played out? Yes. Is the whole point of the movie that beauty doesn't equal goodness? Yes. Is that undercut somewhat by the fact that the big problem with Beast isn't that he's an ugly beast man, it's that he kidnaps and imprisons people over petty reasons? Yes. Does Beast go through a dramatic character arc, including some touching acts of selflessness that causes Belle to reciprocate his feelings? Yes. Am I putting him on thin ice here anyway? Yes. Like, I could see Beast becoming a better person after the film is over, but he does a lot of very disturbing crimes in this movie. I certainly wouldn't want him as king after he locked up Maurice and Belle. Honestly, if I was one of his subjects, I'd probably question why the prince has the ability to lock away innocent people he doesn't like. Honestly, I question the whole existence of the monarchy, because even if Beast is an okay guy at the end of the film, the people have no protection from him becoming evil again. Actually, wait, is Beast even royalty? He's called a prince in the painfully exposition-heavy prologue, but never in the actual film, and we don't see any other member of his family. And like, you'd think that the kingdom would be affected by the only member of the royal family being a wolf bear thing. A buffalo monster! In a cape. Wait, doesn't this movie take place in France? It does, doesn't it? Lumiere specifically says, "This is France!" in Be Our Guest. But that palace sure as hell isn't Versailles, and that village is a far cry from Paris. Wait, why are Lumiere and Fifi the only ones with French accents? Why does Cogsworth wear a Napoleon costume in this scene? This implies this takes place after the French Revolution, and that implies that Beast is a Bonaparte, not a Bourbon. Because if he was a Bourbon, then why the hell would his butler have a Napoleon costume? Here's my theory. Control of France traded hands between two powerful families throughout the 19th century. I think that during this movie, whatever family Beast belongs to is out of power. Beast is a cousin of the actual heirs to the throne. He's wealthy enough to have a castle and servants, but in principle, he's basically just a wealthy nobleman who holds no power over France as a whole. Hell, it's possible that his family was in power during the prologue, but overthrown during the time skip. Anyway, Belle goes in fine, I guess. Beauty and the Beast, the Enchanted Christmas, justifies me making this video Christmas special and wearing a Santa hat. Unfortunately, it's a really bad Christmas movie. It's an interquel about Belle and the castle staff trying to teach Beast to love Christmas. Beast hates Christmas because he was fur affinitied on Christmas. And as I watched this one, I realized why this movie and a lot of Disney sequels just don't work. They suffer from what I like to call Batman's parents were killed by rock and roll-itis. Let me explain. So, Batman's backstory in DC Comics is that he hates crime because he watched his parents get violently murdered when he was 8. It's all backstory, it works, it stood the test of time. And some writers bend this a little to say that the reason Batman doesn't like using guns is because he watched his parents get shot. And again, that works. But like, some writers twist it even further to make Batman hate completely random shit because his parents were murdered. Like, in the comic Fortunate Son, Batman hates rock and roll because he listened to rock and roll music the night his parents died. And in the Brave and the Bold episode Invasion of the Secret Santas, Batman hates Christmas because his parents were killed on Christmas, apparently. But like, these revisions to Batman's backstory don't work at all narratively because it's just the same story repeated under a stupider premise. Batman hating rock and roll is so much dumber than him hating murderers. And these Disney sequels do the same thing a lot. Instead of the story being Beast learning to be kind, it's him learning to be okay with Christmas or to stop hating birds. Instead of Triton learning to accept humans, it's him learning to accept music. But having the same character go through the same exact arc, except stupider, just makes them come across as assholes unable to learn any lessons. And they can't learn those lessons because that will break the continuity of the original film. The main villain of Enchanted Christmas is also stupid. He's an evil organ played by Tim Curry, who doesn't want Belle to break the curse and make him human again, because Beast only started appreciating his somber music after being yippified. What? Hey, Forte? Maybe he started liking your music as an adult, not because he's depressed, but because he stopped being 12. Also, oh no, I am unappreciated. Motherfucker, you are an instrument bolted to a wall. If you were a human with legs, you could walk away and find a whole crowd of people who like your somber music. Honestly, his stated motives are so ungodly stupid, it comes across as a lie he's telling to cover up his real motives. Headcanon, I think Forte is in love with Beast. He doesn't want Beast to fall in love with Belle because he can't bear to see him be with someone else. He sings an entire musical number about how loving someone breaks your heart and makes you depressed, and goddamn it just comes across as him talking about himself. Forte tries to kill Belle by telling her to go into the dangerous murder woods again. Beast saves her, again. Then Forte tries to kill everyone by collapsing the castle. Hey look! Beast is literally on thin ice! On to the last movie in our trilogy. The one where, dear God, that looks shitty! So the version on Disney Plus cuts out a fourth of this film, so I had to pirate this movie. Except none of my normal illicit websites had this movie because it hasn't been re-released in years. The one copy I could find was on this really crappy piracy website, and the movie kept freezing. And, I shit you not, it froze on the cross-eyed Belle frame. Belle's Magical World is another one of those movies where they took a canceled TV show and recut the episodes into a package movie. Included are, Belle and Beast want to apologize to each other, so a talking dictionary writes fake apology letters. Fifi thinks Lumiere is cheating on her with Belle. Everyone throws a party for Miss Potts, and Belle takes care of an injured bird. All of them are really, really boring. This is worse than Cinderella 2 Dreams Come True, and I cannot believe I am saying that. And you know what's worse than boring stories about preschool moral lessons? Ending half of them with songs recapping the lesson we just learned. Like the last movie, this one takes place in the vague wintertime between Beast saving Belle from the wolves and the library scene. I assume that was a few weeks at most in the movie, but no, apparently Beauty and the Beast takes place in the Westeros because this winter never ends! Disney made the right call in not picking this up for a TV series, because Beauty and the Beast fundamentally could not work as a TV show. Lilo and Stitch could, Aladdin could, hell, even Cinderella could in theory, but Beauty and the Beast could not. What would this show have entailed? Well, obviously, it has to take place after Belle is imprisoned, so we can have the titular characters together, but because the Beast design is so iconic, it has to be before the curse is broken. It has to take place in this endless winter where Beast never grows as a person. You can't have that scene where Beast lets Belle go, lets her leave to save her father, even though he may never see her again, because the movie already did that scene. You can't have the iconic library scene or the dance scene, because those are key bits of character development that haven't happened yet. So what you're left with is a show where Beast is an asshole, but can't stop being an asshole. He can't grow, so he just comes off as obnoxious. At one point in this movie, he attempts to murder the dictionary because he's such a fucking asshole. And presumably, if the show was picked up, he would continue being awful, episode after episode, never growing as a person, until it was cancelled. There isn't much to say about this one, vis-a-vis the tier list. Beast writes a letter requesting someone to send him wood at one point, and that's weird. I thought he was completely isolated from society. Also, Belle reads the plot of Cinderella at one point. That's it. I'm done. No more Beauty and the Beast. Wait. Damn it! I forgot to make a guillotine joke!
So I recorded this video over several weeks, which explains why the camera is changed slightly between shots. And anyway, partway through filming it, I had to go to a Thanksgiving party, and someone at that party gave me a cold, and I mean, I'm feeling good now. I had to take a week off working on this video, but I feel good now, except the thing is, my voice is completely shot because I've been coughing for a week, so I'm gonna sound like shit for this section of this video. Anyway, let's watch Aladdin now. Aladdin's portrayal of Agrabah is kind of racist, right? The first lines of the film call Agrabah barbaric, and the film makes it clear that the country is filled with poverty and crime. And that isn't necessarily wrong. These elements existed in 1001 Arabian Nights, and every single country that has ever existed has had poverty and crime. But, like, that isn't shown in a lot of the Disney movies set in Europe. There was poverty in France historically, poverty so bad that they had a revolution and Beast's Uncle Louis got his head chopped off, but that isn't shown in Beauty and the Beast. We don't see the crime or poverty in France. We only see it in Robin Hood, where the poverty is specifically caused by an evil prince. And in this one, the first Disney princess movie with a non-white cast. But still, I don't think that Aladdin is too bad. It's stereotypical at times, sure, but the difference between Aladdin and Peter Pan is that the people of color in Aladdin are people, you know? They're three-dimensional characters. And I'll talk about this more with Pocahontas, but that goes a long way to making this movie watchable. Anyway, Agrabah. It's ruled by a sultan who is very, very incompetent. He probably shouldn't be in charge. Remember all that crime and poverty I talked about? It's this idiot's job to fix those problems, and let's be honest, he's not gonna do that. Either he doesn't know about Agrabah's crushing poverty, or he's too stupid to do anything to solve the problem of starving children. This poverty, realistically, is what drives people to commit crimes, and the Sultan's guards attempt to solve this problem through excessive police brutality. Like, seriously, they tried to kill Aladdin for stealing a loaf of bread. That's fucked up. All guards are bastards. And as the all-powerful dictator in charge of them, the Sultan is culpable for the violent crimes they commit. Agrabah also has a really bad problem with executing people without trial. Jafar orders Aladdin's beheading for a crime he didn't commit, and the Sultan is mad about this because he wasn't consulted first. Hey, Sultan, why the fuck does Jafar have the authority to do that? Like, it's nice that you wanted to be asked first, but the royal vizier should not be able to order executions in the first place. Why the hell does he have enough power that the guards would go along with him telling them to murder a man without a trial? Do trials even exist in Agrabah? And I'm talking about real trials, not an unelected sultan deciding whether or not you get murdered. Because, hey, the Sultan shouldn't be able to hand out the death penalty on a whim either. This country's criminal justice system is a nightmare! And it's not like the Sultan spends the rest of the movie reforming shit. He spends the movie trying to get his daughter married against her will. Speaking of which, Jasmine sticks a tiger on a visiting royal prince. That's an act of war. What the fuck, Jasmine? I'm stealing this criticism from Twisted, but yeah, that's what would happen if a princess tried to kill a visiting prince. A war would happen. Although, to be fair, Ahmed whips children at one point, so he kinda had it coming. Prince Tigerfucker is on thin ice with the Sultan. If we ignore Jasmine assaulting Ahmed via tiger, she's okay. A bit naive, but unlike her father, she's open to learning about the poverty in her kingdom. And she's okay with marrying Aladdin, a commoner. And I feel like Aladdin's perspective could potentially be really good for Agrabah. He knows what it's like to be a quote-unquote street rat. He knows about the dangers of guard brutality. One of the first things we see him do is give bread to starving children. He knows that there are problems that need to be fixed, and admittedly, he uses the magic all-powerful genie lamp to get married instead of fixing societal problems, but, you know, I can hope, okay? If the sequels show Aladdin setting up a robust social welfare system to fix the problem of child hunger, I will put him in unironically based. If not, he and Jasmine go in fine tier. Now, as some of you might point out, doesn't Aladdin not being a prince fuck Agrabah over? Like, the reason the Sultan wants to marry Jasmine off isn't because he's a dick, it's to secure a military alliance. But Aladdin isn't a prince, except he is. Genie's magic made him a prince. The only thing that makes royals royalty is people believing they're special. Aladdin is a prince because people believe he is. Jafar takes away his princehood at the end, undoing a genie's wish by simply pointing out the fact that Aladdin grew up poor. But like, if people believe that Aladdin's a prince, and most people in Agrabah do, then Aladdin is a prince by any definition of the word. And in terms of benefiting Agrabah by marrying Jasmine, while it's true that he doesn't have land or an army, Aladdin is rich! He waltzes in with a world-class menagerie. He's got slaves, he has servants and flunkies. Who cares about military alliances? Agrabah can just buy entire countries using their 75 golden camels. Wait, hold on. Did Genie say Aladdin owned slaves? Did Genie give Aladdin slaves? Is slavery legal in Agrabah? Time out. We need to address this because slavery is fucked up. Genie says that these slaves are treated well, but then again, Genie also says that Aladdin beat the galloping horde, parenthetical, 100 bad guys with swords. We don't know how Aladdin treats his slaves because they didn't exist a day ago. Honestly, the fact that Genie can make people exist out of thin air is kinda existentially terrifying. Are they sentient? If they are, then it's fucked up that they're slaves. If not, it's still creepy that there are soulless puppets created by Genie. Wait a minute. They aren't seen again after Prince Ali. Did they just get erased from existence once their purposes were fulfilled? Believe it or not, there is an answer. Kinda. In the cut song Humiliate the Boy, Jafar says that Aladdin's horses are roaches, his camels are gnats, and his servants are rats. So it isn't slavery because the slaves are rats who are presumably turned back into rodents once the song is over. Regardless, I don't think we can really hold the slavery thing against Aladdin. He didn't say, "Hey Genie, give me slaves!" Genie just handed him slaves randomly. But the fact that Genie brags about Prince Ali owning slaves and doesn't receive any pushback implies that slavery is legal in Agrabah. That's another point against the Sultan. That ice is looking real thin right now! To be fair, the Sultan is open to changing his mind and making things better. He changes the law demanding Jasmine marry a prince, so maybe he'll change other shitty laws. Presumably, they've all been changed in the sequel, right? The Return of Jafar was the first direct-to-DVD Disney sequel. Like Belle's Magical World and Dreams Come True, it was made to kick off a TV series. Unlike those films, this one's TV series was actually made, probably because it's an actual movie instead of a compilation of 3 to 4 mediocre TV episodes. It isn't a great movie, but it has stakes and an antagonist and an actual character arc for its lead. Said lead is Iago, by the way. So, plot. The movie begins with Aladdin beating up some thieves who ransacked Agrabah because Aladdin is a cop now, I guess. One of the thieves, George Costanza, finds the lamp and sets Jafar free. Jafar disguises himself as Jasmine, frames Aladdin for murdering the Sultan, and sentences him to death. The Sultan is still alive, by the way, but he shouldn't be. This is the last straw. He's going in beheading tier because nothing has changed in Agrabah. And you say, oh, that's too mean. Bullshit! He was shown in the first movie that the royal family has too much power, that him being allowed to execute people without trial can be exploited to murder innocent men, and he did nothing to change things. When Jafar Asmin orders Aladdin's death, the response from the guard should be, "Sorry, princess, but Agrabah's constitution gives people the right to a fair trial by a jury of their peers first." The Sultan should not have absolute power. No one should have absolute power, even if the Sultan is nice. The existence of a throne with that much power makes the evil of men like Jafar inevitable. Anyway, Iago betrays Jafar and saves the day. The Sultan offers Aladdin a job as a royal vizier, but Aladdin turns him down because he wants to go on adventures. Yay. Oh, almost forgot. Jafar made himself Sultan briefly with magic, so, chop that fucker's head off. Or throw him into lava, that works too. While Return of Jafar was meant to start the TV series, Aladdin and the King of Thieves served as its finale. In it, Aladdin is getting married to Jasmine, but is sad because his dad isn't there. Then some thieves show up and, what's this? The King of Thieves is Aladdin's dad? I bet you're expecting me to talk about his redemption arc, and learning that his son is more important than all the treasure in the world and all that stuff. Yeah, no, I want to talk more about Agrabah's criminal justice system. The Sultan gives Aladdin's dad Qasim a life sentence for stealing, and cool it isn't the death penalty for once, but he still should not be responsible for handing out sentences. Also, Aladdin at one point breaks Qasim out of jail, and he faces absolutely no consequences for this, because I guess royalty is allowed to do whatever the fuck they want in Agrabah. Anyway, this movie is decent, not as good as the original, but better than Return of Jafar, and definitely better than most Disney sequels. You're probably expecting me to rank Kasim because he's the king of thieves, but, that's just a title, guys. He isn't an actual king. We've been over this. Now that I'm done with the Aladdin trilogy, it's time for me to move on to The Lion. What the hell is this? Disney Princess Enchanted Tales, Follow Your Dreams, More Than a Peacock Princess? You mean the other half of that terrible Sleeping Beauty movie you people forced me to watch? Is it any better than the last one? What do you mean it's worse somehow? So basically, Jasmine is bored with her royal duties, which include ribbon cutting, being in parades, and sitting for portraits. Oh yeah, that's really miserable. What a terrible life. She rants to Iago that she's a smart and capable modern woman. She speaks 3 languages and can name all of the 40 thieves. Wait, what? She knows the names of the 40 thieves? That's such a weird detail to add, considering the fact that the last one was about the 40 thieves. And this movie presumably takes place first because Iago left with Kasim at the end of King of Thieves. So this means that Jasmine knows the names of all the thieves that are planning to attack Agrabah somehow. Including the name of Kasim, Aladdin's father, I guess. Does she know anything else about them? How does she know this information? This one line is more interesting than the entire rest of this movie. Anyway, Jasmine complains to her father, so he makes her a substitute teacher. The students are mean to her, so she threatens them with a tiger. Then she proves herself at the end by taming a rowdy horse. Also, Jasmine has a cousin who is named Sharma who goes in boring tier. This movie sucks. Fortunately, there aren't any other Disney Princess Enchanted Tales to talk about, except there are 4 other shorts in this series that were at least partially animated, and I know this because Disney released trailers for them. One of the pairs would have been released under the name A Kingdom of Kindness, and would have featured a Beauty and the Beast story, still set during the Endless Winter, and a second Sleeping Beauty story. The other 2-parter was never named, but would have focused on Cinderella and Mulan. Only Follow Your Dreams was ever released. This is likely because, when John Lasseter took over Disney in 2006, he clamped down hard on the direct-to-DVD sequels. A few that were already in development came out, but the other 2 Disney Princess movies were cancelled, as were sequels to Treasure Planet, Chicken Little, and The Aristocrats. But there were trailers for the other Disney Princess Enchanted Tales, which means they were at least partially completed. And these movies are lost media. And it's always kinda sad when media is lost, but, it's less sad in this case, because Dreams Come True was god-awful, and the sequels were almost certainly unwatchably bad. But, still, people worked hard on these movies, and it's a shame their hard work was just tossed in the trash. So, will they ever be released? No. Disney doesn't even want Dreams Come True to be watched. They never released it on Disney Plus, meaning I had to pirate it. And also, the person I stole Disney Plus from canceled their account while I was watching the Black Cauldron, so I pirated the rest of the movies on this list. And if Disney didn't want me to pirate things, then they shouldn't have made 5 movies, 3 of them good, about why being a pirate is awesome. Also, they should negotiate with their damn writers. Is the strike still going on? I don't know. I wrote this section while attending a county fair back in July, and I'm just going off the script, even though I, the person in the present, know the answer to that question. In Robin Hood, the king was a lion, but, he was a furry lion. I mean, lions are furry, they're covered in fur, but, fursuit lion. He was a dude, okay? And in The Lion King, the king is an actual lion, as in a carnivore. As in a carnivore who exclusively eats his subjects. And that's kind of fucked up, right? I understand the circle of life. I don't think real lions are evil for eating meat. They're animals and they don't possess a sense of right and wrong. But Simba and Mufasa do. They possess human-level intelligence, and more importantly, the animals they eat possess human-level intelligence. So it's less a wild animal eating another wild animal, and more a king killing and eating peasants. which is, kinda fucked up. Like, imagine if King Chuck only ate random Irish children. That would be wrong and justify chopping his head off. This is a hot take, but I think it is bad for kings to be cannibals. To be fair, lions are carnivores. They have to eat meat. But if someone can only survive through other people being killed, maybe it's best for them to die. Like, yeah, the Emperor from Warhammer 40k needs thousands of people to be ritually sacrificed for him to survive, but that doesn't make it good for him to have mass killings. Like, imagine if someone was dying of kidney failure, so they beat their cousin to death and stole their kidneys. That is still murder, even if it is done out of a desire for self-preservation. And the thing is, the lions don't actually have to eat sentient creatures. Simba is able to subsist exclusively on non-sentient bugs for years. And I mean, bugs aren't as filling as peasants, but that's still an option. Also, we briefly see a fish in the sequel, and it doesn't seem to be sentient. Why aren't the lions fishing? You know what the Lion King reminds me of? Twilight. Like, you know how in Twilight the Cullenses are okay because they only drink animal blood, while the evil vampires who kill people are monstrous because the Cullenses are proof that they don't have to kill people? That's what the lions and the Lion King are like, morally speaking. Ah, but Mufasa has an explanation for why this is moral. The circle of life. The delicate balance of nature where everything is connected. But here's the thing about the circle of life. The circle of life isn't real. Or at the very least, it isn't some concrete law of nature. It is a political and religious philosophy that Mufasa believes in. It only exists because it is enforced by the local monarch. The best evidence that the circle of life is a governmental law rather than a natural one is the hyenas. The hyenas don't fall into that gentle balance of nature. They are treated as a disruption of it. When the hyenas are allowed into the Pride Lands, they destroy everything. They break the balance. But, of course, hyenas are just as much a part of nature as lions. Here's what I imagine happened a few generations ago. The lions came to the prey animals and made a pragmatic deal. They would keep out the other predators like the hyenas and only kill as much as they needed to, and in return, they would be treated as pseudo-religious god kings by the prey animals. And I can understand why the prey animals went along with this deal, but I don't think it makes the lions good. It makes them the lesser of two evils. And honestly, if the other animals wanted to overthrow the lions and institute some form of self-governance, throwing off the shackles of an oppressive royal class, I think they would be justified. I think the thing that bothers me is that the explanation of the circle of life comes from Mufasa. The idea that everyone loves the king being in charge and murdering their loved ones comes from the king. Mufasa might like being king, but what about the average commoner? Do they like it? Do they want to be killed by their government? I know for a fact that at least some of them do not. When Nala tries to murder Pumbaa, his response isn't to say, well, this is the circle of life, and therefore morally justifiable. It is my place as prey to be killed by a lion. No, he runs away screaming. He flees because he doesn't want to die. Honestly, I bet a lot of the prey animals fucking hate the circle of life. I bet they fantasize about Mufasa being trampled by a horde of wildebeest. Actually, wait, are the wildebeest sentient? If so, they just beat their king to death and ignored his screams of pain. And honestly, based! Side note, in real life, predators are actually beneficial for ecosystems. For example, if you get rid of all the wolves, the deer will overbreed, then they'll overconsume the plants, then the ecosystem will fall apart. Wolves are good. Real lions are good. But this argument doesn't hold water because the prey animals in The Lion King are also sentient. If the lions can choose to not overconsume, then so can the antelope. And, while we're talking about real-life predators, you know what are real-life predators in this movie? The hyenas! But in this movie, they're kicked out of the ecosystem and made to starve. The circle of life isn't the natural order. It is an order that benefits Mufasa. So, enough on why the lions in The Lion King are in general kinda shitty. Let's talk about specific lions. Simba is the best of them. We never see him kill one of his subjects, and he understands the dangers of overhunting. He isn't a great leader, because if he was, he would have ordered the lions to start eating bugs at the end of the movie. But given the other lions on this list, Simba could be a lot worse.
I know Mufasa is a good dad and his death is sad and stuff, but to be honest, he kinda sucks as a king. Like, if you had this circle of life arrangement where lions are only allowed to eat enough to survive, you'd expect there to be some actual rules or regulations regarding how much they can eat. Maybe you'd make it so they're only allowed to eat the elderly, or have prey animals volunteer themselves to be eaten. It's still not ideal, but it's better if the prey consent to being eaten. But there does not seem to be any rules about how often the lions are allowed to kill. Our introduction to Scar is him trying to murder Zazu, and we can argue about how serious he was, but the fact remains, Zazu was in his mouth. That's, at best, the equivalent of Prince Andrew holding a gun up to a random person's head and cocking it while they beg for their life, i.e. a crime. Mufasa tells Scar to spit Zazu out, but Scar isn't punished or anything. Scar blatantly violates the circle of life, he attempts to murder the king's major domo, and everyone is fine with it. Mufasa is more mad about Scar missing Simba's baptism than he is about him almost killing Zazu. It is legal for the royal family to kill for shits and or giggles. So yeah, Mufasa is going in Dirk Strider here because he sucks at being a king. He doesn't just hold up an oppressive way of life, he ignores when his brother commits violent crimes against his people. If he had banished Scar when Scar started violating the circle of life, none of the bad things in the movie would have happened. Nala also deserves a good chop because she attempted to murder Pumbaa while he begged for his life. Scar is obviously awful, and Sarabi is fucking terrible. So, Mufasa dies and Simba goes missing, making Scar next in line to the throne. Neat. Question, why do they make Scar king? And yes, I know he's next in line, but who gives a shit? He's evil. Sarabi and the other lionesses serve him because, oh geez, he's the king now. But fuck that. If the king is evil, do you know what you're supposed to do? Follow in the footsteps of our wildebeest comrades and kill that fucker. I don't think, well, Scar is in charge now because of the imaginary rules we made up that say he's in charge, so I have to do all the evil things he says is a good defense. Fuck Scar, fuck just following orders, fuck the monarchy, and fuck Sarabi. If an evil king orders you to do evil, don't do what he orders. He's a scrawny loser, and you could easily kick his ass. The Pride Lands are devastated by Scar and by the lionesses who follow his orders, and I think that makes them bastards. I think Sarabi is responsible for her own decisions. And at the end, she doesn't turn on Scar because he's evil and destroying the Pride Lands. She turns on him because Simba, the rightful heir to the throne or whatever, shows up and defeats him. At the end of the day, the real villain of The Lion King is not Scar or the hyenas, it is the concept of monarchy. But when the movie ends, the monarchy has not been killed, the divine right to rule isn't abolished. They just put Simba in charge and say, well, hope his kid isn't an evil bastard like his uncle was, because if Tiara just decided to go on a destructive rampage and kill all of the prey animals, every single lion would go along with it. And isn't the whole justification for the lion monarchy that they keep the Pride Lands safe? That they keep out the vicious predators? But like, if 1 in 3 Lion Kings is a heartless asshole who will abandon the circle of life and plunge the country into an era of endless darkness, then what is the point of the monarchy? The lion monarchy isn't keeping people safe. It's a half-assed excuse to justify tyranny. Viva la wildebeest! And the thing is, I don't think the prey animals need the lions. After all, they killed Mufasa. The biggest, strongest predator in the land fell to the might of the common people. Lions might be strong, but that strength is nothing when compared to the might of the proletariat. And the hyenas, they're even weaker. I'd like to see the hyenas stand up to a stampede. The people don't need a dictator to keep them safe. They have each other. While The Lion King was an adaptation of Hamlet, The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, is an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet, and it really doesn't work as an adaptation. Like, in Romeo and Juliet, the Montagues and Capulets hate each other over trivial bullshit. The actual reasons for the feud aren't said because they don't matter. The point is, this generational conflict is stupid, bloody nonsense that gets 2 young lovers killed. The story really wouldn't work if, for example, the Montagues were evil and wanted to kill everyone. So anyway, the Lion Montagues are evil and want to kill everyone. The main bad guy of LK2 is Scar's follower, Zira. She and her group of lionesses, the Outsiders, were exiled for being loyal to Scar. It's interesting that so many lions preferred Scar's reign. I mean, they were able to hunt and kill to their heart's content, so I guess it makes sense. Still, it's kind of worrying that so many lions saw Scar cause ecological devastation and went, "Ah, yes, this is better." Actually, wait, why did the grass die in the first movie? Shouldn't it have been longer because all the grazing animals were killed? Anyway, the main character of Lion King 2 is Simba's daughter Kiara. She meets Zira's son Kovu and becomes friends with him. This pisses off Simba because he's an outsider, part of those evil exiled lions. Also, I guess Simba exiled the children too and forbade them from ever returning, which is a very nice thing for him to do. A few years later, Zira has Kovu's siblings try to murder Kiara so Kovu can save her and be unexiled. You'd think that the fact that Simba acts like an asshole to a child would mean that he's the bad guy and needs to change. But he's right. The Outsiders want to violate the circle of life and destroy everything. Kovu is there to kill him. He changes his mind eventually, but Simba was right to not trust him. This movie tries to be about Simba learning a lesson about not hating the Outsiders, but it also can't have Simba act unjustifiably, so as a result, we're left with a film where Simba acts like an asshole the whole movie, except he's right about everything. Also, now that I think about it, I kinda stole this criticism from Big Joel. Anyway, at the end, Zira kills herself, and the Outsiders join the main pride. Lion King 1.5 is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, meaning there isn't much to say about it. At one point, one of the meerkats sarcastically says, "Everything the light touches belongs to somebody else," which is a good counterpoint to Mufasa's, "Hey Simba, you own everything because you're part of the royal bloodline, which is both moral and good." At the end of the movie, Timon and Pumbaa fight and defeat the hyenas, proving my point about them not needing the lions. Lion Guard Return of the Roar was the TV pilot movie for a kids show about Simba's son joining a team called the Lion Guard, which defends the Circle of Life, and also they have superpowers. You may be wondering, where was the Lion Guard in the original movie? Oh, that has a simple answer. It seems that the second son is usually in charge of the Lion Guard because frickin' Scar was in charge of protecting the Circle of Life. Wow, the ancestor god spirits really messed up with that choice. It's almost like positions of power shouldn't be given out based on hereditary, and that doing so inevitably leads to tyrants taking over and ruining everything. Anyway, Simba and Kovu go on thin ice, Simba's kids are fine I guess, and everyone else goes in decapitation tier. So, Pocahontas. Is this movie very flawed and kinda racist? Yeah. Is it a good movie in spite of that? Like, quality-wise, I think it's decently well made, but very much overshadowed by other Renaissance films. In terms of its portrayal of Native Americans, I am way too white to have a meaningful opinion on that. While working on this video, I read a ton of interviews with Native Americans about Pocahontas, and to be fair, some of them like it. Some indigenous people see it as a good piece of representation, and see there being a Native American Disney princess is better than there not being one. And that's a fair point. Other Native Americans I've read hate this movie with a burning passion for being a stereotypical, ahistorical, whitewashed mess, and that's also a fair point. To be fair, I did kind of brush past the stereotypical portrayal of Arabia in Aladdin, but I think Aladdin gets away with it better because Aladdin isn't a real person. Pocahontas was. And when you say, this is about a real person, you open yourself up to a higher level of scrutiny about how you portray that person. And Disney didn't even attempt to be historically accurate. Like, I shouldn't need to explain that this movie is bullshit. Like, it's common knowledge at this point that Pocahontas was 12 when she met John Smith, that they weren't a couple, and that the story of her saving him probably didn't happen, considering the fact that John Smith did not include it in his initial retellings, only beginning to mention it after Pocahontas died. By the way, Pocahontas died at age 21 after being kidnapped, dragged to England, and paraded around as a civilized savage. All of that was cut from the Disney movie. Disney didn't invent this version of the story. The love story with Smith existed in adaptations in the 19th century. The film's writers and directors did know the real history, though, but instead chose to adapt the legend of Pocahontas, the fake version from dime novels. So really, this film isn't even about Pocahontas, it's about the racist Native American princess stereotype stories I talked about earlier. But to give this film credit, it is so much better than Peter Pan. Holy shit, it is night and day. Pocahontas is a person with a personality and motivations and lines of dialogue. And that's such a low bar, but in the 50s, Disney decided to limbo under it. I'm not knowledgeable about Powhatan culture, but from what I've read, the film isn't very accurate to that either, instead opting for vague Native American stereotypes. The mystical, wise, noble, savage shit is also kinda cringeworthy. Here's my take on Pocahontas. The natives in this film are people. They aren't the racist characters from Peter Pan, they're actual characters who are treated with respect. They're people, but they aren't real people. They aren't attempts to tell the story of a real woman or her tribe. And I don't know, that feels shitty, I guess. The film also does a hatred is bad on both sides thing. And I mean, yeah, hatred is bad. It is bad to hate a group of people for no reason. But that message does not work with this film because both in real life and within the context of the movie, one of those sides showed up to commit a genocide. The audience's introduction to John Smith is other characters saying he's there to fight Indians. Thomas very explicitly says he will kill any Indians who get in his way. That cunt Radcliffe orders his men to shoot on sight. They are here to tear apart the land for gold, killing any indigenous person who gets in their way. The Powhatan Confederacy, on the other hand, wants to fight the Virginia Company because they don't want to be the victims of a genocide. One of these things is not like the other. The natives' introduction to the Virginia Company is A, their stereotypical shaman, showing a vision about how the Virginia Company is there to kill everyone, and B, Radcliffe's men shooting at their scouts. Everything they do is justified. The message of, we should all treat each other with kindness is good. The idea of throwing down weapons and negotiating peace is good. But the film really flubs that idea through this insistence on trying to draw parallels between the two sides. Like the white men sing a song about how the natives are savages who need to be exterminated, and then the Powhatans sing the same song. Whoa! Except wait, hold on. The Powhatans are motivated by a desire to survive, and the Virginia Company is motivated by a desire to get gold. Like, these two sides are very clearly not the same. One side is the aggressor, and one side is just defending itself. Like, I'm not a big death penalty guy, but even killing John Smith is kinda justifiable. He's an invading mercenary working for a genocidal jackass who murdered Cocoam in cold blood. And you might say, hold on, Cocoam was shot by Thomas, and that was to save John Smith when Cocoam attacked him in a jealous rage. And you have a point. Maybe someone should have explained what happened to the chief instead of just saying, don't kill him, he's nice! Still, the climax of this movie is admittedly really good, and Colors of the Wind is a good song. It's Oscar bait, but it's good Oscar bait. TLDR, this movie is a mixed bag. Let's do some rankings. Pocahontas, I would argue, goes in actually decent tier. She's perhaps a bit too trusting, but she has all the traits of a good leader. It's good for leaders to be kind. And from a purely pragmatic standpoint, she's right. She's motivated by her love for John Smith, but setting that aside, sparing him is the right call. If Powhatan had killed John Smith, the Virginia Company would have opened fire and killed everyone. And in the end, she negotiates a peace. Pocahontas is a good leader. And so is her father. He treats the arrival of the settlers with caution and restraint, first sending scouts, then calling in military aid from other tribes. He handles the situation the best he can given his circumstances, and at the end, he's willing to change his mind and spare Smith. Finally, a sitting monarch who isn't trash. Fuck King James though, Ratcliffe is committing genocide in his name. I'll have more to say about him after the second one, but at the moment, he is on the thinnest of thin ice. On to the sequel. This one begins with Ratcliffe murdering John Smith. He then asks King James to go to war with the natives. King Jimmy decides to send this guy, John Rolfe, to bring back Chief Powhatan so they can negotiate. Instead, Pocahontas goes. And hey, Pocahontas being a diplomat preserves her actually decent rating, as does her stopping a fight at the start of the movie. James invites Pocahontas to a royal ball to test her. If she acts quote-unquote civilized, he'll act chill. If not, he'll give Ratcliffe an armada so Ratcliffe can commit genocide. Hey, maybe whether or not you commit genocide shouldn't be decided based on whether or not a teenager acts classy at a party in a country with completely foreign customs. Hey, maybe King James should be beaten to death with a hammer for even suggesting that. Like, oh, you didn't wear enough white powder or curtsy right. Death to your entire race. At the end of the party, King James attempts to do a bear baiting. A real thing various members of the British royal family did over the years, where you chain a bear up, then make it fight dogs. Holy fuck, that's disturbing. Pocahontas rightfully calls this barbaric, so James locks her up and gives Ratcliffe his genocide armada. Jimmy changes his mind when A, it's revealed John Smith is still alive, meaning Ratcliffe lied about murdering him, thus making him untrustworthy, and B, Pocahontas explains that there isn't any gold in the New World. But there is gold in the New World. There wasn't that much in Virginia, admittedly, but there absolutely was gold in North America. And having James's decision to not kill the Powhatan people hinged partially on there not being any gold kind of makes that decision meaningless. Because there is gold, and it will be found eventually, in which case I guess he's going to send the armada again. This is not a happy ending. This is a delay, nothing more. And of course, historically speaking, Pocahontas going to England did nothing. The British kept sending ships, they kept searching for gold, and they kept killing those who stood in their way. And this may be a hot take, but I think any king who permits slaughter in his name should be decapitated. Also, Queen Anne is boring. I almost put her on thin ice because she honestly should be smothering Jim with a pillow, but I decided to put her in boring tier because she's boring. A lot of you probably want to hear my thoughts on this movie's new male lead. Fine. Utamatomakin is this movie's best character. I appreciate how little fucks he gives about anything. So anyway, this movie breaks up Pocahontas and Smith and instead has her get together with a new character named John Rolfe. He's fine. Not a great love interest, but he's fine. The thing is, it is weird to have the first movie be all about this deep romance between Smith and Pocahontas and give him a song about how he would rather die tomorrow than live 100 years without knowing her, and then abruptly have them break up. It's so sudden. At the end, after they're reunited, she says, "We've grown apart and work better as friends." To be honest, I actually like them not being together at the end of the first one. It gives the film a nice, bittersweet ending. But if you're going to add in another romance, why not build on the one you already built up? The reason they go with Rolfe is because he was Pocahontas' husband in actual history. But this film still isn't historically accurate. It is based on the fact that Pocahontas traveled to England, but still leaves out her kidnapping, conversion to Christianity, and death. So if it already isn't being historically accurate, why care so much about this one specific historical fact? Overall, this film is okay, but it continues to bug me vis-a-vis the race stuff. It portrays London as wondrous, and the monarchy as ultimately just. It portrays Ratcliffe as being one bad apple. But of course, evil is rarely spawned by lone villains. Often, it is born from systems. Mulan isn't a Disney princess. Why is she listed as a Disney princess? She is the daughter of a farmer who falls in love with an army captain. She is not royalty by any definition. I guess Li Shang is the son of a general, and generals are authority figures, but there's a difference between being an authority figure and being a king, namely the heritability and the pseudo-religious justifications for their authority. And Shang may be a Nepo baby, but that doesn't make him a prince. Maybe the term Disney princess just means female character, but in that case, a bunch of other characters should be princesses, like Lilo or Jane. Mulan is the official princess, second least deserving of being called a Disney princess. Still, there is a monarch in Mulan. The unnamed Chinese emperor. He's cool. That scene where he says, "No matter how hard the wind blows, the mountain will not bow." And his first response to the Han invasion is not to protect his palace, but to send the army out to protect his villages. I wish I could put him into actually decent tier, but He conscripts people into his army. So let's talk about the morality of drafts. Drafts can be used for good. This movie is a good example of a draft being used for a good purpose. The people of China are conscripted to fight off a destructive invading army that wipes out entire villages. The emperor drafting people saves lives. But I still think that drafting people is kinda immoral. Like, here's the problem with drafts. Yes, they can be used to save innocents, but they can also be used for destruction. The US drafting soldiers in World War II bolstered the military and helped crush the Nazis, but the US also drafted soldiers during Vietnam and sent them out to indiscriminately bomb multiple countries, drop chemical weapons on children, and exterminate entire villages. And that's, fucking monstrous. Primarily because of the mass killings of civilians by a military empire, but it's also a shitty thing to do to those soldiers. Grabbing random young men and forcing them to either commit war crimes or spend years in prison is fucking evil. Johnson and Nixon should have both been Second Amendmented. If the state has the authority to force people to join the war machine, it will inevitably use that authority to force people to fight in amoral wars. So, as a rule, I don't think drafts should exist. I think any country where a ruler has the ability to conscript people is, by its very nature, authoritarian. I think the highest, most unalienable right is the right to own yourself. And drafted soldiers don't. If the government can take you from your home and force you to kill other human beings, then you do not have any freedom. Like, Americans circle jerk about how the military protects our freedoms. But back when the draft existed, the US military was an affront to the very idea of liberty. And also it still kinda is for other reasons. And to get off this tangent and back to the actual film, the draft in this movie sucks. The Emperor calls for one man from every family, regardless of the actual makeup of that family. Mulan's old disabled father, who walks with a cane and can't swing a sword without collapsing, is drafted. And let's be real, Fa Zhao wasn't going to do much against the Huns. I think he would have died quickly without accomplishing anything. And it is shitty for the Emperor to send him to die pointlessly. But, as much as I fucking hate the idea of drafts, it is somewhat justifiable in this movie. I don't like it on principle, but I don't think the Emperor deserves to be decapitated for it. Desperate times stretch our values, and the Chinese army in this movie is tiny. Like, maybe there are off-screen divisions, but according to what is said in the film, the entire army is General Lee's troops, which are killed off-screen, and Shang's recruits. Then again, the Hun army is also pretty small. There are only a few thousand Huns, and all but half a dozen of them get killed by Mulan. Side note, it is wild that Mulan has such a high kill count. Average Disney princess kills 200 men factoid, actually just statistical error. Average princess kills 0 men. Mulan Jorg, who lives in China and killed the entire Han army with an avalanche, is an outlier and should not be counted. While we're talking about Fa Mulan, can we talk about the fact that her pretending to be a guy to save her dad is repeatedly stated to be punishable by death? Death without trial, might I add. The way the scene in the mountains is framed, it seems that Shang has the right to just instantly chop Mulan's head off. I mean, he doesn't because he owes her, but he shouldn't have had that authority in the first place. So yeah, there are some issues with China in this movie. Still, the Emperor is understanding and bows to Mulan at the end, so I could see him learning from the events of this film and doing things better in the future. He doesn't make it into actually decent, but I think he averages out to fine, I guess. Is Shan Yu a king? Shan Yu was the title used by the supreme rulers of Inter-Asian nomads, says Wikipedia, and the list of Shan Yus has a bunch of sons of other Shan Yus, so I'm going to say, sure. And if I'm wrong, then complain in the comments. It's good for the algorithm. Regardless, Shan Yu is a terrible leader. A, because he murders civilians, and B, because he is a glory hound who sends his men to their deaths pointlessly. Like his, all of China knows I'm coming, good, I want to fight the strongest army shtick is cool, but also really dumb from a tactics standpoint. Shoot that fucker with a rocket! Mulan 2 takes place a month after the first one, and has the Emperor deal with the coming invasion by the Mongols. The Emperor decides to save China by allying with the neighboring kingdom of Qigong. To arrange this, the Emperor has Mulan and Shang take his 3 daughters to Qigong so they may marry the country's 3 princes. This bothers Mulan, who thinks arranged marriages are dumb. And yeah, they are. But again, arranged marriages of royals are done to secure military alliances. Like, selling your daughters off to marry Freddie Fingertrap and his brothers is kinda shitty, but you know what else is kinda shitty? Letting your country be destroyed by an invading force because you don't have an army anymore. Marrying the princesses off is a much preferable solution to conscripting disabled veterans and throwing them into a meat grinder. And I know it sucks for Mei, Sue, and Ting Ting, but like, who gives a shit? I really don't care about princesses not liking arranged marriages. Because, as princesses, they live a very privileged life. They don't have to work, they don't have to worry about being hungry, they get to have millions of people treat them like demigods. The least they can do is accept the one bad thing about being royalty. They can do the bare minimum of sacrificing their own comfort for the sake of their country, in a way that is far less severe than the way everyone else sacrifices their own comfort, either through working hard so the emperor stays fed, or through dying in battle. And you know, maybe it isn't fair that they have to be arranged married just because of who their dad is. And you're right, that isn't fair. But you know what else isn't fair? Them living lives of comfort and wealth because their dad is the emperor. The entire idea of royalty is unfair. This is at the bottom of the list of things that are unfair about monarchies. And sure, this unfairness should be fixed, but only when other injustices are solved. Only when the monarchy is destroyed. Now, to be fair, the three princesses do fake their deaths and run away, presumably to become commoners. And that's good. Fuck the monarchy. But I mean, maybe the middle of a war where the only way to stop villages from being eradicated is by getting married is the wrong time to choose to be independent. Also, they don't even meet the princes. Maybe it's a Sleeping Beauty situation where they're great. They aren't, but they could be. Honestly, this film shoots itself in the foot by centering things on an impending invasion. If it was arranged marriages to secure the shipment of grain or something, then the princesses in Mulan would be sympathetic. But by bringing up the Mongolian invasion, it makes them come across as self-centered idiots. Put them in too stupid to rule. Honestly, this one isn't that great. Mulan and Shang spend the whole film arguing about marriages, while Mushu tries to break them up because he's an asshat. And in the end, Mulan is right, but like, no she isn't. Shang was correct in this situation. That's not to say Shang isn't dumb in this movie. The Emperor asks how many soldiers he needs to guard his daughters, and Shang says 3. Not 3 battalions, 3 men. Specifically, Ling, Yao, and Xianpo, the comic relief trio from the last movie. And on one hand, they were vital in saving the Emperor from the Huns, but on the other hand, they are all idiots! And why didn't you bring more men? Anyway, as you'd expect, the 3 princesses fall immediately for the idiots. Which means that Shang isn't a Disney prince, but Yao is. All 3 of them join their brides in Dum-Dum tier. Anyway, bandits attack and kill Shang because he only brought 4 soldiers. Mulan, heartbroken, tells the princesses to run away and instead offers herself as bride to Prince Fingertrap. Shang, who is still alive because no shit, interrupts the wedding by throwing a shuriken between Mulan and the prince, and A, that's a crime, and B, where did he get a shuriken? That's a Japanese weapon, not Chinese. Lord Qin, the ruler of Qigong, orders his men to arrest Li Shang. And he's framed as being an asshole, but some random guy just burst into his son's wedding and started chucking bladed weapons. Hashtag Qin did nothing wrong. Shang asks to marry Mulan, casually tossing aside the vital military alliance because love or whatever. In the end, Mushu saves Shang and Mulan from Qin's men by pretending to be God and saying he'll kill Lord Qin if he doesn't let Mulan and the princesses free of their marriage vows. Lord Qin, afraid that this fire-breathing dragon will murder him, agrees. Mulan and Shang go home, and everyone lives happily ever after. Hey, what about the Mongols? Did this film forget about the Mongols? Because Lord Qin did not promise to give military aid to fight the Mongols. All he agreed to do was let Mulan and Shang go. China is fucked. And I know the assumption is that he agreed to it off screen, but we don't see that, and also why would he do that if he wasn't forced to by Mushu? Anyway, it's a good thing Mulan isn't a real princess, because if she was, she would be on thin ice. Okay, we can just brush past this one. Cusco is a terrible ruler. he decides to destroy Potch's village to make a summer home. And while the ending of the film implies he'll be a good leader going forward, he's still an arrogant, self-centered idiot, as seen in the TV spin-off that I barely remember watching as a kid. We'll put him on thin ice. Yzma goes to the guillotine, no explanation needed. I was honestly going to just skip past Kronk's New Groove. It's one of those 3 shorts movies, except this one is unrelated to the TV show. In one story, Kronk helps Yzma scam old people with a fake potion of youth. In the second, he falls in love with a rival camp counselor at ancient Peruvian cheer camp, something added to the film because one of the film's writer's wife was really into cheer camp. And in the last story, he tries to impress his father. It's a mediocre film that isn't nearly as funny as the first. Cusco is barely in it. At the start he says he's nice now, and at the end he has a cameo as one of Kronk's fake wives. So, nothing to talk about, right? Except in the first short, Yzma's scheme is to become popular so that she'll be elected empress. Meaning emperor is an elected position, which means that the Cusconian Empire is now at least somewhat democratic. It definitely wasn't a democracy in the first film though, and Kronk says that he didn't know the emperor was an elected position, which means that this change is recent. Which means Cusco dismantled the monarchy and established elections. Cusco very well might be the best ruler we've seen in any Disney movie thus far. I mean, he isn't. He's a terrible ruler, but he knows that and gave his people a way to peacefully replace him with a better ruler. The Cusconian Empire doesn't have to worry about a scar situation because their leaders are no longer chosen by birthright thanks to Cusco. I don't know where to put Cusco. He broke my rating scale. He's bad, but he dismantled the monarchy, which is a really good thing to do. How do I rank this man? I think he needs his own tier, just above actually decent. Cusco gets a special Cusco tier, which is exactly what he would probably want. You know what I realized while rewatching this movie? It's kind of similar to Pocahontas. Both movies are about a group of Western explorers coming across a group of native people and attempting to kill them for resources. The leader of the natives is rightfully suspicious of the imperialists, while his daughter falls in love with one of them. Kita's relationship with her father Kashakim is similar to Pocahontas' relationship with her father Powhatan. Then again, it's also similar to Ariel's relationship with Triton, so maybe that's just how Disney wrote female characters in this era. The main difference is that Atlantis is told from the focus point of the imperialists instead of the indigenous people. We see Atlantis in the opening scene, but it then takes half of the movie for it to appear again. Rourke feels like a more realistic villain than Ratcliffe. Ratcliffe is vile and genocidal, but he's also treated like a joke half the time. Rourke is a brutal, remorseless soldier motivated solely by greed. I've seen people criticize this film for having a stupid villain, because the cultural artifacts and technology of Atlantis would be more valuable than the Big Crystal, and those complaints miss the point of Rourke as a character. Like, yeah, 8,000-year-old writings and pieces of art would be incredibly valuable, but Rourke is incapable of realizing that because he doesn't think of the Atlanteans as people. The conquistadors were in awe of Tenochtitlan. It was greater than any city in Europe, and still, they destroyed it. Because gold was more valuable to them than culture or technology. Because human lives are worthless to those ruled by greed and bigotry. Tangent over. Let's talk about King Leonard Nimoy. 8,000 years ago, he used the heart of Atlantis as a weapon to try and take over the world. Then he accidentally blew up his own country. Oops. Then his wife sacrificed herself to move Atlantis to the bottom of the ocean, which is enough to save her from boring tier and skyrocket her to actually decent. I like Kashakim as a character, and he has chilled out since the prologue. He says that in the past, he would have killed Milo and the others on sight, but instead he lets them leave with their lives. That's progress, and the scene where he gives up the crystal so Milo can save Kita is really well done. But I still think he's a bit of a dickhead. Here's the thing. I think that if he messed up 8,000 years ago, apologized, and dedicated himself to making things right, he would be fine. Not great, but passable. Except, no one knows that he's responsible for Atlantis being sank. Kita thinks the gods sank Atlantis as a punishment, And no, they didn't. The people of Atlantis would probably want the king's head if they knew he was responsible for destroying everything. But they don't. His daughter doesn't know that he's responsible for her mother's death. And I think rulers who kill thousands and then enact massive cover-ups to hold on to power are pretty shitty. And look at how he's running Atlantis. The country is falling apart. It's in this constant state of decay where they can't use their own technology or read their own writing. Kida is naive in letting in Rourke's team, but at least she tried to do something rather than just sitting back and watching as the kingdom dies. Side note, I double-checked his Disney.fandom page, and one of the commenters wrote, "I don't like it when Rourke did to him." Me too, O Chosen One. Me too. Additional side note, I feel like this movie was written specifically to give linguists an aneurysm. At the start of the film, Milo explains how people mistranslated Iceland as Ireland, because they're one letter away in English, and as we all know, ancient Norse was just a different alphabet for modern English, and also the Vikings called things by their modern names. Milo is able to speak Atlantean because he's a linguist, and sure, he could have figured it out roughly if he had enough time to study, I guess. But Kida is able to speak English and also all European languages because they have Atlantean roots. And that isn't how language works, Kida! Kida is fine, I guess. Bit too trusting, but she is right that Atlantis needs to end the stagnation and that the only way that can happen is if they meet with people from the outside world. And let's see how Kida leads her people in Atlantis. Milo's Return. Ah, shit. This is a 3-short style movie made out of a failed TV series, isn't it? Well, at least it's better than Belle's Magical World. Fuck me, that's a low bar. The first short has the gang come back to Atlantis, and Atlantis seems to be doing well under Milo and Kida's leadership. They're rebuilding, they know how to use their technology, and Kida says it's a place of knowledge and learning instead of ignorance and fear. The gang explains that a kraken has been sinking ships. A kraken. They say kraken for some reason. Kida assumes it's an Atlantean superweapon like the Leviathan, and thus her responsibility to fix. Wait, a leader taking responsibility for her country's crimes, even the ones that aren't directly her fault? Fuck yeah! Kida's a competent leader. Also, she's able to leave Atlantis and go fix things because she has a group of counselors who can run day-to-day operations. Yes! Delegation of duties! Kida is smart! Turns out the Kraken is just a random giant octopus with mind control magic, completely unrelated from Atlantis. Those exist, I guess. Anyway, Milo and company kill it. Then they get a call from Dr. Sweet, who's back home in Arizona and found an Atlantean medallion. In Arizona. Goddamn, I know they said Atlantis was a big empire, but I didn't know they meant stretching from Iceland to Arizona big. I'm gonna guess that empire probably did a lot of crimes against humanity, what with it being a continent-spanning empire and all. I'm really close to putting King Spock in deserves to be punched in the stomach tier. Once the team arrives in Arizona, they run into dust tornadoes made out of ghost coyotes. Long story short, the coyotes are controlled by a Nishoni ghost named Chikashi, who's mad at Bobby Mustache here for stealing pottery from the ruins of a hidden indigenous city. The team discovers the city and finds a giant Atlantean statue which proves Native Americans actually learned everything from the Atlanteans. Side note, this is an actual thing real people believe. And by people, I mean Nazis. So, this is a very brief overview of a really complex topic, but basically, there are cranks out there who believe that Atlantis was real, that there was this hyper-advanced civilization, and that it was destroyed, and that the survivors of this lost civilization spread throughout the world, bringing science and technology with them. This theory is horseshit, by the way. A lot of the people who believe this Atlantis shit are die-hard white supremacists, and it's easy to see why. The idea of Atlantis is a good tool racists can use to ignore counter-evidence. Actually, those natives didn't have cities or pyramids. They were all built by the ancient race of secret white people. And, of course, it is very easy to jump from there was an ancient superior race that invented everything to the ethnic group that I am a part of is more closely related to that race to we must purify our race by exterminating Jewish people and gay people and Romani people and disabled people and communists. Like, it needs to be understood that some of the Nazis were really, really into Atlantis because it helped justify the Holocaust. Fucking Heinrich Himmler went on an expedition to Tibet to try and find evidence Atlantis existed. And that was a stupid thing to do because Atlantis isn't real. It never existed. It was a fake city in an allegorical story Plato made up. Trying to find Atlantis is like trying to find the lost country of Narnia, except really racist. So anyway, it kind of skeezes me out when this film suggests that Native Americans received knowledge from Atlantis. Like, I don't think the film's creators are fascists or anything. I think they just repeated myths without thinking about the implications of them or researching who those myths were popularized by. Rant over now. Chikashi threatens to kill the team to protect the secret city. Kita explains that she also has a secret. Chikashi asks what it is, she refuses to tell, and that was the smart call because it was a secret test of character. In the last segment, a weird old rich guy named Hellstrom, who thinks he's Odin, steals the legendary spear Gungnir from Whitmore. Turns out the Norse mythology was also created by the Atlanteans, and that Whitmore just casually owns a magic god spear. Okay, sure, let's go with that. It's mentioned that Hellstrom lost money when the stock market crashed, meaning that this movie takes place after 1929. The first movie took place in 1914. Like, Kita doesn't age normally, and I guess Milo and Whitmore are kept young by the crystals, but how the hell are the rest of the team still young? While we're talking about the team, I'd like to bring up something weird I noticed about this movie. During the first segment, Whitmore sends Milo, Kita, Mole, Audrey, and Vinny. In the second mission, Vinny stays home, but Sweet joins the team. During the final segment, they swap Sweet for Vinny again. Why do Vinny and Sweet hate each other? Anyway, Hellstrom kidnaps Kita, comes to the conclusion that she's his daughter Brunhilde, and then tries to use Gungnir to cause the Ragnarok. It's weird that a guy obsessed with Norse mythology only half remembers stuff from Norse mythology. TLDR, the team beats him. This movie isn't very good. It's 3 disjointed segments, none of which are properly fleshed out. But I don't hate this movie, because there is actually a reoccurring theme running through the 3 segments that I like. This movie is about Kita figuring out what kind of leader she wants to be, and 3 missions each contribute to that choice. At the start of the movie, Kita leaves Atlantis for the first time, and she loves the outside world. She has fun exploring and meeting new people. In the Kraken story, Kita is shown that there are people out there who need help, like the villagers she saves from the Kraken. In the second, she meets Chikashi, a man who, much like her father, keeps a lost city safe by killing those who discover it. In the third, she deals with Atlantean technology that endangers the entire world. And after all of these experiences, Kita makes a choice. She uses Gungnir to raise Atlantis out of the ocean, reuniting Atlantis with the rest of the world. And that is a big choice. It's a choice that will have massive ramifications for the future of her people. She has just opened Atlantis up to the threat of invasion by people like Rourke. In coming years, Kita will have to work very, very hard to keep her people safe. This could be a bad choice, but I think it's the right choice. Leaders have a responsibility to their people, yes, but they also have a responsibility to the world. It's bad when monarchs kill people in other countries, even if it benefits their own people. The Leviathan and Gungnir are pieces of lost Atlantean technology that hurt people outside of Atlantis. And, as Queen of Atlantis, it is Kita's responsibility to clean up after her father's mistakes. Like, imagine if a country decided to go completely isolationist and stop interacting with the world, but before closing everything, they planted a bunch of nukes in other countries and set them to go off at some random point in the future. Even if the strict isolationism was good for the country, they would still be bastards if they didn't do anything about the destructive time bombs they left armed. Also, isolation isn't necessarily a good thing. Interacting with the outside world saved Atlantis in the first movie, and interacting with other cultures, sharing knowledge and art, that can be very beneficial to a people. The entrance of new ideas into Atlantis is good for the Atlanteans. Yes, this is a risky choice. Yes, there will be challenges in the future. But I think that, to be a good leader, Kita has to raise Atlantis from the sea. In Marvel Comics, the country of Wakanda has traditionally been very isolationist, with things only beginning to change in recent years due to choices by King T'Challa. This isolationism keeps them safe, but it also prevents them from fighting alongside other countries when, I don't know, Galactus shows up to eat everyone. It's good for Wakanda and good for the world that Wakanda begins opening up. During Reginald Hudlin's run, there was a very infamous line of dialogue where it was revealed that Wakanda invented a cure for cancer and then kept it secret. And Jesus fucking Christ, that line sucks. It makes Black Panther come off as a tremendous douchebag responsible for millions of deaths. Sorry, children dying of leukemia. Our hero decided you have to die for the sake of his country's military might. Like, for fuck's sake, T'Challa, as written by Reginald Hudlin, would have killed Chadwick Boseman out of spite. And Atlantis is kind of the same way. They have a healing technology that was enough to keep their people young for millennia. Raising Atlantis allows them to cure diseases, invent clean energy, and make the world a better place. So ultimately, I think it was a hard choice, but Kida chose wisely. Also, Milo can be with her and actually decent. I think Tiana could be a good ruler. Her defining character traits are being hardworking and being selfless. And having a leader from a working class background would be nice. Then again, at the end of the movie, it seems like Tiana is going to stay in New Orleans and run a restaurant instead of becoming a queen, making that a moot point. She's still better than most of the princesses, though. Also, this movie teaches kids the wonderful lesson that the best way to defeat racism is to threaten racists with brutal violence until they stop being evil cunts. Naveem would probably be a bad king, though. He's a laid-back playboy and musician who spent so much money that his parents cut him off. He also follows an obviously evil witch doctor into a back alley, which realistically would result in him being mugged to death. He becomes a nicer guy after being frogified, but I still wouldn't put him in charge. Fortunately, he isn't put in charge. I guess his younger brother is going to become king. Yay, I guess he and his parents go in boring tier. So, here's the weird thing about this movie. Should I count Lottie? And the obvious answer is no, she isn't a princess, she's just a random rich chick. Except, the curse on Naveem can only be broken by a princess, and Lottie counts as a princess as far as the curse is concerned. Which leaves me with an odd conclusion. Within the context of this film, members of royal families possess a special magic. The divine right to rule is real, and also, it extends to the King of Mardi Gras. If John Goodman wasn't supposed to be the king of the parade, then God would have intervened. What else has monarch magic? Are homecoming or prom queens actually queens, as far as magic is concerned? Did Elvis and Michael Jackson have royalty magic? What about the Burger King? And yes, I know that it's probably the curse being susceptible to a loophole, as curses commonly are, but I think it's funnier if we pretend Lottie is actually legally part of a royal bloodline because her dad was in a parade. And I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. All kings are kings just because people call them king. There is nothing special about monarchs. They're just random people who say, give me a bunch of money because you gave my dad a bunch of money, because you gave his dad a bunch of money, etc., etc. And then a lot of really stupid people say, oh sure, your highness, you are a special superior form of humanity because you say you are. Have all of the money. You're allowed to rape children. Like, why shouldn't a Mardi Gras princess be qualified for this list? After all, her claim to be royalty has the same basis in objective reality Naveem's claim does. And look, here she goes, right next to Naveem in dumbass tier. I guess they really did end up together in the end. That's a joke, by the way. I'm not actually adding her to the list. Hey, remember Rise of the Brave Tangled Dragons? I don't have an end to that train of thought. Just wanted to remind people that that was a thing. Early 2010s Tumblr users really sucked at naming things. Rapunzel is, and stick with me because this is a drastically new character archetype, but Rapunzel is a naive but optimistic teenage princess raised by a stern and stubborn single parent who dreams of interacting with a world that she is separate from. But, rather than being a mean father like a lot of her predecessors, Rapunzel is raised by an evil, abusive witch who kidnapped her as a child. So, you know, going back to Disney's roots. You could very easily make an argument that Mother Gothel isn't actually evil. That everything she does is to keep herself from dying, and is thus justifiable. You could make that argument. It's a fucking stupid argument, but you could make it. See my Mufasa is basically Dracula rant for why that argument is dumb. Still, something I find interesting is the framing of Gothel's actions versus the King of Corona's actions in the prologue. Gothel using a magic flower to heal herself is portrayed as cruel and greedy, while the king killing the flower to heal his wife is seen as noble and just, at least in how the movie frames it. And I can understand Gothel being a little pissed about being condemned to death because a dumbass king killed the immortality flower. That doesn't justify all the fucked up evil shit she does to Rapunzel, but still, King What's-His-Face kinda screwed her over. Rapunzel doesn't know she's royalty for most of the film, so a lot of what I can say about her as a leader is repeated from previous princesses. So, she's naive but nice and selfless, meaning she'd be a bad queen, or maybe a good queen. Who knows? Eugene, aka Flynn Rider, is a thief, which is illegal. But also the only thing we see him steal is a crown from the royal family, so who gives a shit? Stealing from the monarchy is fine, IMO, because they steal more from us. Plus, he's willing to sacrifice himself for Rapunzel and keeps his word, so yeah, he's fine. Honestly, the fact that the king and queen of Corona are okay with their daughter wanting to marry a convicted felon is surprising, especially because they tried to murder him in cold blood earlier in the film. Hey, that's fucked up! They tried to hang Eugene within a day of them arresting him without a trial for larceny. That's brutal and authoritarian. Trials are really important given the fact that they don't actually remember what Eugene looks like. He's guilty, but for all they know, he could just be a random guy who vaguely looks like the wanted poster. This is why trials are important. Rapunzel's parents aren't really characters, so I can't put them on the list yet, but if I could, they'd probably be on thin ice. Side note, I realized while editing that I've been harping on the executed without trial thing because it shows up a lot. That shouldn't be taken to mean that I'm fine with executions in the event that there is a trial. The death penalty is an authoritarian abomination that should not exist. I firmly believe that the state should not have the authority to murder people. The reason why I'm bringing up the lack of trials is to point out that that makes it worse. Executions are evil. Executions without trial are doubly evil, and executions without trial for minor crimes are triple evil. Tangled Ever After is a short film about Rapunzel and Eugene's wedding. I have nothing more to say about it. Tangled Before Ever After takes place before Tangled Ever After and is a 55-minute pilot for the Tangled cartoon. It's weird that this one is 2D animated. It makes sense from a production standpoint, but a big part of Tangled's identity was being this big, beautifully animated CGI film. This TV movie takes place 6 months after the original. Rapunzel is a proper princess, but she hates it, because she has to curtsy and memorize names and wear corsets, and boo-hoo, you're rich! Yeah, she's a bit whiny at the start of this one. To be fair, a lot of her dissatisfaction with her life is centered on her being locked in the castle and carefully watched at all times by her father's armed guards, because he's worried about her being kidnapped again, which ties into her desire to be free from the first one. Said king is named Frederick and is played by Clancy Brown, an actor best known for playing Undertow in The Little Mermaid 2: Return to the Sea. According to one of the antagonist's minions, this guy, Frederick cracked down on all the undesirables after Rapunzel went missing. God, I hope he means murderers and kidnappers, because the way he phrased that, it sounds like Frederick committed genocide. And to be fair, a medieval European king blaming his daughter's kidnapping on a minority group and using it as an excuse for repression is absolutely something that could have realistically happened. Before Ever After introduces Cassandra, Rapunzel's lady-in-waiting, who I assume caused heavy shipping wars. The night before Rapunzel's coronation, Cassandra helps Rapunzel sneak out of the castle and takes her to the location of the magic flower, which is now overgrown by magic spiky rocks that try to kill them. When Rapunzel touches the rocks, her hair comes back, thus undoing the original movie's beautiful climax. Honestly, I applaud the brazenness needed to make this choice. Other Disney movies have struggled to have TV series made because vital elements of them were erased over the course of the film. Like, the Little Mermaid cartoon had to be a prequel because the most interesting part of the movie was when Ariel was a mermaid and she wasn't a mermaid at the end of the movie. And the Beauty and the Beast show could have never worked because you need Beast to be a beast for it to be recognizable. But if this show's creators had worked on Belle's Magical World, that movie would have featured Beast suddenly becoming a monster again. And honestly, that would have worked better than what we got. It would have been deeply, deeply stupid, but so was Belle's magical world. Anyway, Rapunzel tries to hide her hair, then a pirate lady shows up at her coronation to murder her, and Rapunzel is forced to reveal her hair to her parents. Said pirate lady wants revenge because her father, a petty thief, was given a life sentence during Frederick's crackdown on crime. And, hot take, I think life sentences for misdemeanors are bad, especially when, again, there isn't any semblance to a right to a fair trial. After Rapunzel saves her father and explains she wants to see the world, King Frederick says he loves his daughter and that the best part of him died when Rapunzel was kidnapped. He then doubles down on imprisoning Rapunzel and forbids her from ever leaving the kingdom. Wow! That ice you're standing on sure is thin, Freddy. Hope he gets better in the series, because otherwise, he's going to end up falling into the icy water of decapitation. That metaphor doesn't really work that well. If you're wondering why I didn't talk about Queen Ariana, it's because she's barely a character and doesn't get a line until halfway through the movie. I'm not going to watch the TV show because I am way too busy, but I gotta say, of the pilot movies I watched, this one was the best, and it isn't even close. I actually considered beginning to watch a children's cartoon because this was a good pilot. It introduced new characters, it set up plot points, and most importantly, it left things unresolved. Frederick is still a dick, and the mystery of the rocks is still up in the air. It even ends with a mysterious person visiting the flower site for some mysterious purpose. Who are they? Fuck if I know, but I want to know. I made fun of the hair returning, but making it a mystery and presumably the driving question of the series was a smart decision. I looked up the series and learned a few interesting plot points, which I won't spoil, but they sound like great ideas for a sequel. Admittedly, I also heard that the show fumbles said plot points pretty badly, but, trying an interesting idea and failing is better than Beast learning the same lesson 50 times. Part of this is because the nature of cartoons has changed over time. In the 90s, cartoons were almost completely episodic. A semi-serialized cartoon like this couldn't have been made in the 90s without heavy network pushback. I mean, there was the DCAU, but those shows were very much an exception, not the rule. It isn't fair to judge shows from previous decades for existing under the network stipulations of their era. But still, I like the cartoon renaissance we saw in the 2010s. I like mysteries that build over time and characters who have arcs. And I'm glad that Tangled set that up, regardless of how well it stuck the landing, because, again, I don't know if it did. Brave isn't a Disney movie. At the start of Wreck-It Ralph, we are shown some of the most evil villains in gaming. M. Bison, Eggman, Zangief, Satan, Clyde from Pac-Man, this random zombie, and, most evil of them all, Bowser, the king of the Koopas. Like, he's a big dumb cartoon turtle, but his relationship with Peach shows a clear disregard for consent. No means no, Bowser! Now, does that mean I am going to put him in Chop the Bridge from Under Him so he falls in lava tier? You dumb motherfucker! Did you even watch Wreck-It Ralph? Bowser is essentially an actor, just like Ralph. There is no reason to assume he's actually a dick. Also, he's in the movie for 2 seconds, so he goes in boring tier, just like in Smash. But, you know who is a dick? King Candy. He runs an unjust system where the impoverished are continually disenfranchised. You need a medal to be allowed to race, but medals are only given out for people who've already raced. This leaves people like Vanellope trapped in helpless situations. It's bullshit he specifically came up with to be unfair because he hates her, and also a fitting metaphor for the inherent injustices of capitalism. King Candy's guards tase an unarmed man, which is an example of police brutality, and they imprison Felix, who hasn't done anything wrong. Off with his head! Also, he's secretly Turbo, who accidentally destroyed 2 entire worlds and almost did the same to a third. Honestly, I wonder if this film would be better if King Candy was genuine. The moral dilemma of Vanellope being a glitch and her dreams endangering all of Sugar Rush gets tossed aside once it's revealed that Candy is Turbo. Ralph standing up for Vanellope, even if she's a glitch, could have furthered the movie's themes of not letting other people decide if you're good or bad. I mean, the gamers do like Vanellope even though she's a glitch at the end of the movie, but it's undercut by her actually being an intended part of the game. Also, of course they love her. Gamers love glitches. Who doesn't love Missing No? Actually, it makes sense that the arcade owner hates glitches, given the fact that he seems to be inspired by Walter Day. I can't wait for the third Wreck-It Ralph movie, where some douchebag cheats to get a new Fix-It Felix Jr. world record, then sues journalists who report on him cheating. For legal purposes, that joke is not in reference to anything. At the end, it's revealed that Vanellope is actually a princess, and I like her as a character, but she's just a kid and is kinda dumb, and the first thing she does is turn Sugar Rush into a constitutional democracy. Oh my god. Vanellope is, and I cannot believe I am saying this, but Vanellope is based! She's the most based princess in any Disney movie. She receives the coveted Unironically Based Award! Now, to be fair, she does say that she'll be president now, but in the next one, she leaves Sugar Rush. Vanellope is willing to give up power and return it to the hands of the people, which is the best thing an unelected dictator can do. Speaking of the second one, Ralph Breaks the Internet begins with Ralph saying he was a loser with no friends for 27 years. In the first movie, Fix-It Felix Jr. had been plugged in for 30 years. This movie takes place 6 years after the last one. Ralph also broke the time-space continuum, it seems. At the start of the movie, Ralph goes turbo, ditches his game, and builds a new track for Vanellope, resulting in the Sugar Rush arcade machine being broken and the game shut down. Did he not learn anything from the first movie? Like, Ralph, stop going turbo! There was a whole movie about why you shouldn't go turbo! To fix Sugar Rush, Ralph and Vanellope go into the internet so they can buy a new steering wheel on eBay, and uh-oh, this one isn't very good, is it? This movie is like the Emoji Movie, except less bad, but still pretty bad. It has a plot about Ralph becoming a viral internet star through starring in really bad viral videos. The problem is, internet meme culture is constantly changing, and parodying things from a decade before the movie came out comes off as incredibly dated, in addition to being a comedic black hole that makes big chunks of this film a slog to sit through. Also, the product placement. There's so much product placement! So here's the difference between this movie and the original. The original had cameos of video game characters, this one has cameos of websites. But the thing is, video game characters are characters. It works better when Ralph talks to Zangief than when Ralph walks past a big Amazon billboard, you know? People interact with video games differently than how they interact with websites. People have fond memories of Mario and Pac-Man because they're from pieces of media. They're worlds and stories that you interact with on that level. Who the hell has nostalgia for Pinterest? I have fond memories of pieces of media hosted on websites and interactions with other people on websites, but not the websites themselves. I don't like YouTube, I like people I watch on YouTube. The first one was informed by the love and nostalgia the creators had for their youth, but this one is just, eBay is a website that exists now! You don't feel the same love and care put into this one. The slaughter race stuff is good, though. How surprising. The video game scene in the sequel to a movie about video games is the best part of the movie. On the other hand, we have the Disney.com scene. Back in July, I described Ready Player One as a movie made for investors. Somehow, this is worse. This movie has a scene where it just shows a list of expensive IPs Disney owns. Vanellope goes there and meets with the Disney princesses. Snow White, Cinderella, Rapunzel, some Scottish lady who I've never seen before. Okay, let's do this. Brave is not a Disney movie. Disney is a large company that owns a lot of studios, including the studios Walt Disney Animation Studios and Pixar Animation Studios, which are different studios. Just like Marvel Studios and Lucasfilm are different studios. Merida is not from a Disney movie and thus does not belong on this list. And you say, well, she appeared in this Disney movie, and A, so does C-3PO, which means I'm obligated to do Star Wars, and B, no she doesn't. That isn't Merida. That is a fake digital version of Merida from a quiz website. None of these princesses are the real versions. They also have like 3 lines each, meaning they all go in too boring to care tier. Tell you what, if this video gets 5,000 views, I will make a sequel where I discuss the other Disney princesses. But only if I get views. Give me views! What else can I say about this movie? We have Spamton at home, mispronounces Des Moines, and as an I-win, I am legally obligated to encourage his death. This character is the living embodiment of a social media algorithm, which means she realistically would be the most vile person you'd ever meet. This character is named E-Boy. Also, there's a scene where Ralph gets abusive comments, but this is a children's movie, so they're all really tame. In real life, those commenters would be telling Ralph to kill himself, and half of them would feature the N-word for some reason. The main arc of this movie is about Ralph learning to let Vanellope go. And it's an okay arc. At the end of the movie, Vanellope leaves Sugar Rush and transports herself to Slaughter Race, which, you'll notice, is the exact opposite of the first movie's message. Wreck-It Ralph was about learning to accept your life and find joy in it, while Ralph Breaks the Internet is about tossing your life in the bin because you don't like it. Vanellope has gone full turbo. At the high school I went to, we did skits during homecoming week. When I was a freshman, the skit we came up with was to have a student dress in drag and lip sync to Let It Go. You may ask, why? I don't know. It was funny because it was an uncoordinated chubby guy flailing to pretty music. Anyway, it's weird to think that something I did when I was 14 that I faced zero pushback for is now the type of thing that would cause conservatives to call in bomb threats to my school. This story doesn't really have anything to do with this video, it's just the first thing that comes to mind when I think about Frozen. Frozen gives us not one, but two princesses, neither of which are officially Disney princesses due to complicated marketing reasons. Their father is the king and... wait, are those military medals? This man fought in a war, which is either a good thing or a bad thing, depending on the war. I sure hope he didn't attempt a genocide against a group of indigenous people. Foreshadowing. I guess it's a moot point, though, because Papa Ognar fucking dies. Fortunately, he and Queen Iduna managed to crush his daughter's self-esteem and cause her to isolate herself in the castle for years on end first. Jokes aside, I don't think Agnar and Iduna are really evil. They made a mistake with Elsa, but Elsa almost killed Anna by accident. They saw a bad situation and tried to do what was best for both of their daughters. Unfortunately, it was kinda abusive and messed Elsa up as a person, which caused her to kill hundreds of people. They don't directly say that she killed anyone, but come on. She froze an entire country. There are probably fatalities because people weren't prepared for winter. Hell, the sudden cold snap would have devastated crops, so you can probably expect starvation in coming months. Elsa almost destroys her country. Thus, she goes and goes sailing in a storm tier, right? Wrong. Everything Elsa did was an accident, and she fixes it at the end of the movie. Her response to almost hurting people is to isolate herself on top of a mountain to keep other people safe, which is the right thing to do, based on the information she had at the time. And the whole eternal winter thing probably won't happen again, because when the movie ends, Elsa is finally allowed to feel emotions instead of holding them in until she explodes and kills everyone. And the thing is, Elsa is a vital military asset because with a snap of her fingers, she can destroy any country that goes to war with Arendelle. She can turn snow into an army and make ice that is tougher than steel. Queen Elsa is what political science people call a nuclear deterrent. And in peacetime, her castle building skills can be used for infrastructure. She is also able to transmute fabric into ice and back again, meaning she and Piccolo could team up and make an awesome clothing business. Also, did I mention that Elsa can create sentient beings out of snow? Basically, Elsa is a god. Anna is kinda naive, but to be fair, there's a meta-ness to her naivete. Anna acts like she's in a Disney princess movie, which is understandable because she is a princess in a Disney movie. Love at first sight and getting married after a few hours is something that works in most Disney movies. It isn't her fault she's in a Disney movie that decided to deconstruct other Disney movies. When the blizzards start, she climbs a mountain to go save the kingdom. She also sacrifices herself for Elsa, which is good for her sister and good for the kingdom. Anna being nice and caring is a good thing because that's what ends the eternal winter. She also puts her fiancé, who she's known for a few hours, in charge of the kingdom, which is naive, but also not the worst decision. Hot take, Hans isn't a bad leader. He's a prick and the film's twist villain, but up until the end, he acts like a good ruler. He gives out blankets to freezing civilians, and he does this to endear himself to them so he can take over, but it's also the exact thing a good ruler would do in that situation. He stops Weaselton's goons from killing Elsa because he's worried that will cause the eternal winter to be, eternal. He only attempts to kill Elsa when he realizes she isn't capable of fixing things first. He acts like a good ruler because he's pragmatic and wants to take over, and the pragmatic choice is actually being a good ruler whose subjects love him. Hans is the only evil ruler who isn't an idiot. Although he does explain his evil plan to Anna, then leaves her alive. That was fucking stupid. Like, even if Olaf hadn't showed up, what if one of the servants went to check on the body and discovered she was still alive? What if Anna wrote something down? What if someone responding to her pounding on the door? God damn it, Hans! You were so close! But no, you had to go all Bond villain at the last second. Oh, and given the fact that he is a member of the Southern Isles' ruling family and just carried out a half-assed assassination attempt, he probably just caused massive political tensions between his country and Arendelle. Oops. If Hans was in charge, he would do mostly good things, which is better than a lot of the bad leaders in this video. But I imagine he would do fucked up evil shit in secret to hold on to power. So, fuck him. Off with his head. There is one more royal to talk about. Maybe. Is the Duke of Weselton a royal? Depending on the country and the era, the term duke can either refer to a member of a royal family or just to a nobleman. I'm going to be lenient and put him on the list, specifically near the top of the list where Elsa's dress goes, because, you know, that is really thin ice. It's only like half a centimeter off her skin. Like, that's very fine ice that she made out of magic. The Duke is in charge of one of Arendelle's main trading partners, and he is a dick. He sends goons to murder Elsa, and admittedly she did almost impale him, but the way he frames it, his big problem is not her endangering people, but her being a sorceress, which should not be a crime, nor should it be punishable by death. He bitches about Hans saving the lives of the peasants, which is A, monstrous, and B, really stupid. No one is going to listen to you if they know you're an asshole. It's really bold of Weselton to just show up in another country, act like he's in charge, and order the death of a reigning monarch. Why the hell did he think anyone would listen to him over Hans? And at the end of the movie, Arendelle cuts off trade with Weselton because their duke ordered an assassination. Pro tip for aspiring diplomats: attempted murder is generally frowned upon. Weselton's a dick. A dick who feels weirdly familiar. Oh, it's because he's played by Alan Tudyk, an amazing actor who also played King Candy. Hey, I wonder what else he's been in lately.
Da na 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 da na 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 pum 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 pum.
Alan Tudyk has been in every Disney movie since Wreck-It Ralph, plus a bunch of other movies and shows made by Disney subsidiaries. Okay, theory time. Alan Tudyk has dirt on someone. Maybe an executive or a casting director, I don't know. The important thing is that he was the sole witness to a hit and run that happened 10 years ago. The executive begged Tudyk to be silent, and Tudyk thought back to Firefly being cancelled and said, "Fine, I shall keep quiet on one condition, that I will never go without work again, that you will give me money to appear in Disney movies until I die, because if you don't, I will tell everyone what happened at that party back in 2011. Or maybe he's just a really good character actor who gets a lot of work because he's good at his job. Or maybe he also blackmailed someone working at Warner Brothers, and that is why he plays so many DC characters. Anyway, Frozen made all the money, so there was a bunch of short films made based off it. In Frozen Fever, Elsa has a cold and accidentally creates life. Hey, if she loses control of her powers when she's sick, she should probably isolate herself in her mountain castle until she gets better. There isn't much to say about this one, other than the fact that Elsa accidentally launches a giant snowball across the ocean and hits Hans in the head. I feel like that would cause an international incident. Elsa just assaulted a member of a foreign royal family, and yes, it's a snowball, but it's the size of a boulder. Considering the fact that it didn't break up when crossing the ocean, it's probably solid ice, which was traveling at many miles per hour. Hans is dead, or at the very least, severely, severely injured. Like, his family hates him and makes him shovel shit as punishment for being a dick, so Elsa faces zero consequences. But come on! She wasn't aiming for Hans specifically. She could have very easily killed the King of the Southern Isles, thus starting a war. And I mean, she would have won the war because she's basically a walking nuke. But wars are bad! The moral of the story is that you should rest in bed when you're sick unless you have a 3-hour video essay to make. In Olaf's Frozen adventure, Anna and Elsa realize they don't have any family traditions. Olaf decides to find new traditions. One of the Arendellians' traditions is baking a giant cookie shaped like Norway, which means that Norway exists in this universe, which is weird because I assumed Arendelle was the equivalent of Norway. Also, Olaf talks to a Jewish family, and this seems minor, but considering the fact that this film takes place in the 18th or 19th century roughly, that is pretty progressive. Shout out to Queen Elsa for not being anti-Semitic. Actually, come to think of it, An Enchanted Christmas had a stereotypically Jewish axe who told Belle, Happy Chanukah! Why do the Christmas specials have all the Jewish characters? Like, the only other Jewish Disney characters I can think of are Kronk and Stan Lee. Maybe Fagin from Oliver and Company because he's based off an anti-Semitic character from Oliver Twist, but I haven't seen that movie so I can't comment on it. Like, as far as I know, Walt Disney Studios has never made a movie with a Jewish protagonist, but the crappy Christmas spin-offs to Disney movies do go out of their way to say, hey, Hanukkah is a thing. Anyway, Olaf collects traditions, then almost dies. Unfortunately, he lives. Anna and Elsa realize their Christmas tradition was sharing drawings of Olaf as kids. Actually, wait, is Olaf Elsa's son? I mean, kinda, right? Does that make him eligible for this list? I'm going to say no, on the basis that if Anna and Elsa suddenly got hit by a meteor and died, Olaf wouldn't be put in charge. I feel like legally, he's Elsa's pet. Frozen 2 begins with Papa Ognar telling Anna and Elsa about the Enchanted Forest, a mystical area inhabited by the Northuldra people. He explains that his father, King Runerd, gave the Northuldra a big-ass dam as a gift, but then those treacherous Northuldra murdered him and a bunch of spirits got mad. Cut to the present, where Elsa hears a voice in her head. She responds by singing a fucking banger by Panic at the Disco called Into the Unknown. Quick tangent, this movie is a Disney sequel, but it's an actual Disney sequel, as in made by Walt Disney Studios, not Disney Toon Studios, and the shift in quality is kinda astounding. The story is a bit all over the place, but Frozen 2 is more ambitious than most Disney sequels, and I do kinda like it. The big thing that this does better than any other Disney sequel is look good. And going from The Return of Jafar or Belle's Magical World to Frozen 2 is astounding. This movie's animation is excellent due to the tireless work of underpaid animators who should probably go on strike because this movie's production was a train wreck. Also, again, the music is excellent. Now, wasn't Wreck-It Ralph 2 also a movie made by Walt Disney Studios with good animation? Yes, but it's hard to focus on the good animation when that good animation is being used to have Disney princesses just stand there staring at the camera saying, consume Disney products, consume Disney products, consume Disney products, consume Disney products, consume Disney. Anyway, the really good song wakes up angry spirits who fuck up Arendelle. The royal family leads an evacuation and hands out supplies, which is good, and decide to go check out the Enchanted Forest. There they find the Northuldra people and Runerd's soldiers who have been trapped for decades, both blaming each other for the attack. And I'm sure that this movie will do some simplistic centrist, actually the indigenous people and the colonial powers slaughtered them in real life are both wrong because hatred is bad bullshit like they did with Pocahontas. Although, hey, Disney did meet with Sami representatives to ensure cultural accuracy and also dubbed Frozen 2 in the Sami language, which is a big improvement over the company's handling of indigenous people in the past. Elsa goes on a quest and discovers that Grandpa Runerd was actually a dick who built the dam to fuck up the ecology of the forest and screw over the Northuldra. He did this because he was a racist asshole who wanted to commit genocide. I mean, because he hates magic. Even though the Northuldra do not possess magic. Yeah, I'm gonna assume it's the racism explanation. Although, he does say at one point that he hates magic because it makes people think that they're powerful enough to defy the will of a king. And wow, what a fucking asshole. Also, he murdered the Northuldra leader in cold blood and ordered his men to attack the rest of the Northuldra, conveniently when Ognar was turned around, because otherwise it would force Anna and Elsa's dad to be aware of the fact that Arendelle's prosperity was forged on barbarism. When Olaf finds out about this atrocity, he says that it goes against everything Arendelle stands for because Olaf is not immune to propaganda. Anyway, Elsa fucking dies, and then Olaf fucking dies, and Kristoff is busy having an intimate relationship with his Northuldran equivalent, so it's up to Anna to save the day. Now, let's paint a picture. Anna has just learned that her country has a long history of racism and brutality. She learns that her grandfather dammed up a river to screw over indigenous people. She knows that, if this dam is destroyed, it would devastate Arendelle. So, what does Anna do in this scenario? She blows it the fuck up! She takes one look at that dam and decides to bring it down like the walls of fucking Jericho. I mean, technically she destroys it by getting some rock monsters to smash it, but the point is, Anna destroys the fucking dam. And like, based. Anna acknowledges the crimes of her country's history and goes out of her way to make up for them, even though it harms Arendelle. Like, no one dies, the city was evacuated, but Anna was willing to let it be destroyed if it meant making up for the crimes of her family. And also, it isn't just bad things that happened in the past. The Northuldra are still trapped and the Enchanted Forest is still suffering. Like, that's a blind spot that a lot of people, even people who I don't think are really bad people, have regarding systemic crimes that happened in the past. A lot of people regard shit like slavery or the Native American genocide as being bad, but, bad things that happened a long time ago that don't really matter anymore. But of course, the consequences of oppression don't disappear the minute you stop actively committing acts of violence. Like, the United States government was actively committing genocide on Native Americans when my father was a kid. The US government forcibly sterilized Native women with the stated goal being reducing their population during the 1970s. And that has stopped for the most part, but that doesn't mean that everything is good now and the consequences of centuries of genocide don't exist anymore. My family was not rich by any means, but I had good parents who worked hard and helped me pay for college and allowed me to stay with them during the pandemic and when I was looking for a job after college. And that isn't a lot, but a lot of Native American kids my age do not have the same opportunities or financial stability as me because their parents were victims of a genocide. The number one correlating factor for wealth in this country is the wealth of your parents, and when your parents are poor because of government tyranny, and their parents were poor because of flat-out genocide, and etc, 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 then you're probably going to be poor, and so will your kids, even if those kids are born decades after the genocide. I think that there is a moral imperative to make things right with the children of the oppressed. Not just to stop ongoing violence, although that is a big part, but to help fix the consequences of that violence even years after it has ended. And I'm the white guy who makes video essays in my basement in front of posters of a racing game while wearing a Santa hat. I don't know what making things right looks like, but it's something that has to happen. What was I talking about? Oh, right, Frozen 2. I've definitely done that gag before. Anna destroys the dam, even though doing so will destroy a big chunk of Arendelle, because she has a moral obligation to make things right. Also, Elsa comes back to life and saves Arendelle, which is a good thing for her to do as a leader, but kinda undercuts the whole sacrifice thing from a narrative standpoint. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, Anna and Elsa's mommy Duna is Northuldran actually, and did not tell them or her husband this, presumably because there's still a lot of bigotry towards Northuldra in Arendelle. In a deleted scene, Anna says that the Northuldran language is illegal in Arendelle, and yikes, that will put Agnar straight and get thrown off a cliff like his dad tier, but it's only in a deleted scene and I don't think I should count it. I don't really know what to make of Iduna. She only appears in a few brief flashbacks, but she seems to be nice. She saved the son of the evil guy who massacred her people. She also doesn't bring up the fact that she knows about magic spirits when her daughter has magic spirit powers, which seems like a pretty dumb decision on her part. At the end of the movie, Elsa decides to stay in Northuldra and learn about her heritage, while Anna marries Kristoff and becomes queen. Let's rank these people! Runird is a dick, off with his head. The unnamed Northuldra leader he murders seems nice, but he didn't question the ecological damage a massive dam would have on the forest until after it was built, meaning he is too dumb to rule. However, because we do not know how the Northuldran leaders are chosen, he and Yelena are ineligible for this list. I don't know what to make of Iduna, so she goes in fine, I guess. I want to hate Agnar, but the movie is careful to portray him as completely ignorant of all the bad things his father does, so he goes in fine, I guess. Kristoff is nice, but he doesn't really make any of the tough decisions, so I guess that he goes in fine, I guess. Elsa is a good leader, but she also almost destroys Arendelle in both movies, which bumps her down to fine, I guess. And Anna does not go in fine, I guess. She goes in actually decent, bordering on unironically based. Myth of Frozen Tale is a VR short recapping the spirit stuff from this movie. I didn't watch it because I don't have a VR headset. I hope it didn't feature a scene where Elsa became a mass-murdering tyrant or something. Once Upon a Snowman covers the time between Let It Go and Olaf meeting Anna and Kristoff from Olaf's perspective, and this short film adds absolutely nothing. Why did I watch it? Why did you make this, Disney? I'm off script now, but this thing, it was just boring. I'm pretty sure it shows that Olaf is responsible for the wolves showing up to attack. All this short does is make Olaf a bit of an asshole. I don't know why it was made. Let's watch Moana now. That's a better movie. In this movie, Maui says Moana is a princess because she wears a dress and has an animal sidekick. which explains why Mulan is a Disney princess. She has a horse and a cricket and a jackass dragon. Also, by this logic, Lilo is a Disney princess. And so is Hercules. Moana is a solid princess. She helps out with roof repairs, teaching, and tattooing. When the blight strikes Motunui, she recommends clearing out the diseased trees and fishing other parts of the lagoon. Like, Moana's father Tui acts like she impulsively wants to go sail for other islands, but Moana only brings it up when she has no other options, and she doesn't suggest that she go sailing at first, only that the people of Motunui go sailing beyond the reef. Also, Moana finds Maui and restores the heart of Te Fiti, thus saving her people, and presumably all of Polynesia. Moana is easily in the top 3 best Disney princesses, and firmly goes in actually decent. Her dad kinda sucks though. Like, I get it, he has trauma, but if Moana hadn't ventured beyond the reef, everyone would have starved to death. Tui is a well-written character, but he is blinded by his trauma and refuses to take even basic steps to protect his people. Hell, just sending fishermen a few thousand feet farther would have been enough, and he refuses to even do that. The worst thing he does is try to burn the boats, which were Motunui's only chance at survival. I'm sorry, but Boba Fett Washington goes on thin ice. I like Grandma Tala. She's nice and gives Moana good advice. Also, she dies at the perfect time, which is super convenient. Fine, I guess, for sure. Moana's mother Sina goes in boring tier. You know, a lot of people mock Disney movies for having so many dead moms, but when moms actually appear, half the time they don't do anything. Like, are Fa Li or Maria at the top of anyone's favorite Disney characters list? Apparently not, because I just called Aurora's mother Maria, and none of you noticed. Do you know what her name is? It's Leah. Or is it? You don't know, because she isn't a character, because Disney really likes stories about princesses who have shaky relationships with their fathers, and mothers are irrelevant to that plot. Doing this project has made it clear how many Disney movies have their leads have important relationships with their fathers. Ariel, Simba, Pinocchio, Belle, Jasmine, Jane, Pocahontas, Kida, Mulan, Moana, Raya, Chicken Little, Quasimodo, Searcher, and Ethan Clade. The list goes on. Tiana, Tarzan, and the Frozen sisters have important relationships with their mothers, but they also have just as important relationships with their fathers. Cinderella, Snow White, and Rapunzel all have relationships with their mothers, but they're evil stepmothers. Hero and Lilo are raised by female relatives other than their mothers. Conga, Chica, and Mrs. Potts are all mothers, but they're the mothers of side characters. The only Disney movies about a relationship with a mother I can think of are Bambi and Dumbo. Finishing up the list of Moana characters is the chief from the flashback and his son, who go in boring tier. According to the wiki, the chief is named Matai Vasa. Also, now that I think about it, it's weird that the English parts of We Know the Way are sung by Lin-Manuel Miranda, because the guy who sings the Samoan parts, Opataya Fawai, speaks English. He grew up in New Zealand and is a professional musician. Why does he suddenly transform into Lin-Manuel Miranda? Before starting this project, I had watched at least part of every Walt Disney Studios movie on this list, with 2 exceptions. The Black Cauldron, because who the fuck has seen The Black Cauldron, and this last movie, Raya and the Last Dragon. I went in blind. This one features 5 countries who are at war over a magic gem, which means I have so many different rulers to sentence to death. Most of them are really shitty, but not Chief Benja. Chief Benja is cool. He wants to end the strife, so he invites all the other chiefs over for a feast, and gives a speech about how they need to trust each other. This movie is a bit of a reverse of a normal Disney princess movie, with a stern daughter and an idealistic father. I've seen other people call Benja too trusting, but he isn't. He keeps the gem in an underground cave full of traps and doesn't tell the other chiefs where it is. He isn't an idiot. He invited people over for a meal, and Raya was the one who led the other chiefs to the gem. Benja did nothing wrong and goes naturally decent. But, you know who did something wrong? The other chiefs, who broke the gem and caused the apocalypse. That was really stupid. The Spine and Tail chiefs caused the destruction of their own countries and their own deaths because they're idiots. Talon Chief Dang Hai also dies after the prologue because he's an idiot, although his country at least still exists in the present. His replacement Dang Hu is also shitty. Dong Hu uses the dragon gem to control the Droon, and uses them to kill dissidents. She keeps her kingdom safe, unlike the last 2 stupid assholes, but she's also horribly evil. Speaking of stupid assholes, Verona sucks. First off, she causes the dragon gem to be shattered, thus letting free the Droon. In the present time, she's planning to expand Fang territory into the mainland, which is imperialism, and imperialism is bad. Expanding your borders is shitty. Although, I guess it is less shitty when you're expanding into lands that are desolated because their idiot rulers set free an army of murder demons. But Verana's biggest fuck-up comes when she finds out about Raya. Wow, she's trying to save the world? Something that benefits my people? I'll send my daughter to go rob her at crossbow point. What the fuck are you doing, Verana? You have the same goal. You would win instantly if you just gave Raya the gem shard. You have the same goal! Oh, but you see, if Raya saved the world with Verana's help, then people wouldn't give Verana credit for saving the world and forgive her for destroying it. Except, hey, maybe they'd forgive you if you repented for your greed and helped save the damn world. Verana's stupidity results in Sisu being killed, which causes the destruction of Fang. Oops! Who would have thought that attacking the people who want to stop the destruction of Verana's country would result in the destruction of Verana's country? Fucking idiot. Like, she's supposed to be Mr. Spock, oh, I'm so logical, but all of her decisions are petty and emotional. Every chief not named Benja is going to the guillotine. Like, this is a movie about trust, but you shouldn't trust these people because they fucking suck. I want to like Namaari. Like, I get that she's only evil because she has an over-controlling mother. I don't blame her for the Droon being released. She was a child. But for the bulk of the movie, she's an adult and thus responsible for her own decisions. And she keeps making bad decisions. She tries to fight Raya for the gem instead of, teaming up with her because they have the same exact goal. And yes, she suggests working with Raya after seeing Sisu, but she still betrays Raya when her mom tells her to. Also, hey, quick tip on gun safety, don't point a gun at something you don't want to shoot. Don't point your crossbow at the magic dragon who is needed to save the world, because if your finger slips and you accidentally pull the trigger, then uh-oh, everyone's a statue now. Like, yeah, Raya startled her by chucking a sword at her, but that wouldn't be a problem if you weren't aiming a crossbow at the magic dragon you need to save the world. Everyone in this movie sucks and is an idiot, except Benja. Sweet, sweet Benja. I miss him so much. Namaari kinda redeems herself at the end when she helps Team Raya save the day, I guess, but that feels flat to me because she's just doing the same thing she wanted to do earlier. She's the one who uses the gem to save everyone. If she had let Raya be the one to save the day, then that would be redemption. But I don't really feel anything for her saving the day, because it isn't overcoming her flaws or making up for her crimes. Like, she isn't guillotined here, but she comes close. Also, Raya is not just as much at blame for Sisu's death. Raya barely has any blame. The movie hits you over the head with the theme that Raya needs to trust other people, except she is trusting. She trusts Sisu, Bone, Noe, and Tong almost immediately. She teams up with the survivors of the other nations to save the world. The only people she doesn't trust are the ones trying to kill her, which isn't a bad thing. Like, not trusting the person kidnapping your friend and threatening to murder you isn't a character flaw, it's basic self-preservation. Also, I like that this movie gave us a Disney princess who flat out marches into the bad guy's palace to murder her. Raya does not fuck around. She spares Namaari, which is probably for the best, but the point stands, don't fuck with Raya! Namaari and Raya go in thin ice and fine, I guess, respectfully, bringing our list to a close. God, we're roughly 3 hours in, and it is nice to finally be done watching Disney movies. They made another one. Another Disney movie came out while I was editing this video. They made me watch another Disney movie. God, being a video essayist is hard. One website that has been a vital resource while working on this video is animationscreencaps.com. This website features thousands of screenshots each for hundreds of different animated films, including every single Disney movie. The little images appearing in the corner, I got those from this website. If I had to manually take my own screenshots, this video would have taken 5 times as long and would not have came out on time. I bring this up as a segue to the reveal that I don't have any screenshots from Wish. The screenshot website takes images from the DVD releases, and this film just came out. So this is just going to be me and you, and maybe some pictures of the characters from the trailers, but not for every scene. You know who else didn't have a good copy of Wish? Piracy websites. I could only find a very, very low quality version, filmed in theater, that had people talking in the background. And also, they added ads for a casino website that almost certainly gives viruses. They had lower third ads and paused the movie a few times to add in really bad commercials. I'm not going to show these ads because fuck casinos, but they were very, very bad. The thing about piracy is that piracy sucks. It's inconvenient and often a lower quality. Piracy websites are filled with ads and pop-ups and viruses. People often don't pirate, even when they know how to, because legitimate means are more convenient. But when companies raise their prices or cancel shows after 2 seasons to get out of paying the people who made them, or delete shows to get out of paying royalties, or get rid of completed movies for tax breaks, or refuse to accept deals that pay the writers and actors who make their damn movies, or overwork and underpay animators, then people are going to start pirating because you got rid of the convenience and you got rid of the way to support the people who made the art they like. If Disney and Netflix and Warner Brothers don't want people to pirate as often, then the solution is to stop being fucking assholes. Anyway, Wish. This movie takes place in the Kingdom of Rosas, a country in the Mediterranean founded by a powerful sorcerer named Magnifico. It's a beautiful island where everyone is welcome regardless of ethnicity, where people are protected from harm or ill will. Magnifico protects their wishes and grants the wishes of those who are worthy. What do you mean by worthy, Magnifico? So basically, when people turn 18, they go before Magnifico and tell him their wishes. He then sucks those wishes out, which keeps people from even remembering them. Magnifico grants wishes, but only if he feels like it. He says at one point that he granted 14 wishes last year, and that was higher than normal, and that isn't a lot. Asha, the protagonist, asks him to grant her grandfather's wish to become a musician who inspires people, and Magnifico says, fuck no! If he inspires people, he could inspire people to overthrow the government. Wanting to play music is dangerous, and it's his job to make sure only responsible wishes are granted. I've seen a few people try to paint Magnifico as being a good guy who just wants what's best for his people, and what? This is a man preventing music from being played because art can make people rise up against tyranny, and he can't have that in Rosas. We see very clearly what happens when people have their wishes removed. They lose all their drive. They lose the ability to ever accomplish their dreams without Magnifico's approval. Sleepy here is basically lobotomized. Magnifico is one of the cleverest and most sinister villains in any Disney movie. Scar or Jafar or the Evil Queen could never have held on to power because they're evil and everyone hates them. Magnifico acts nice. He occasionally performs these massive acts of charity for his citizens. But it's all an act. The main reason he grants wishes is as a front to crush any person who threatens his regime. The only wishes he grants are the ones that benefit him specifically. Wow, he grants Sleepy's wish to be an evil knight who does whatever Magnifico says. How generous of him! Magnifico knows that you have to give a little back to hold on to power. He knows that you have to be a little nice. But, of course, the truth of his reign can be seen in how he deals with dissidents. With brutality, without remorse. And I think we should be every bit as remorseless when we chop off his head. Magnifico has the honor of being our guillotine's last customer, even before he goes mad with power and tries to kill everyone. Anyway, Magnifico goes mad with power and tries to kill everyone because Asha finds a shooting star that can grant other people's wishes, thus undercutting his power. He tries to steal back the wishes, he throws a hissy fit when people question him, and then he starts consuming the wishes to become a dark god, something that physically hurts people. His wife, Amaya, reacts appropriately by saying, "Beat it, bozo," and joining the revolution. See, this is what you do when the king is a dick. Amaya is actually decent. Additional thoughts. At one point, Magnifico says he lets people live there for free, and I don't know if that means he doesn't have any taxes, or if it means he's a landlord who owns all the houses. I've seen people theorize that this movie was written by AI, based solely on the fact that Magnifico repeats himself during that line, and no, that's stupid. This film wasn't written by AI. As someone who has read a bunch of really bad AI writing for another very long video essay, no, ChatGPT couldn't have written this film. Is that what we're going to do now? Just say everything that we don't like is written by an AI? Tell writers to go fuck themselves and pretend they don't even exist if they commit the cardinal sin of having repeated sentences in a fucking musical number? Stop calling anything you don't like AI generated. Also, this film has a lot of references to other Disney movies, but they're all minor and forgettable. Oh, this guy wearing green is named Peter and wishes to fly, or, oh, this talking deer is named Bambi. Speaking of talking animals, you won't guess who voices this baby goat, just like the police won't guess what Alan Tudyk saw Bob Iger do 10 years ago. I've watched close to 50 different Disney movies of varying quality. So, how good are the leaders in these movies? Pretty shitty for the most part. There were admittedly a few good ones, like Moana, Kida, and Anna, but the list is definitely lopsided on the shitty ruler side. To be fair, a lot of these, like the Evil Queen or Prince John or Scar, are meant to be evil. What I find more interesting are the villains that weren't designed to be monstrous. People like Mufasa or the Sultan, who the writers tried to make sympathetic. But of course, when you're in charge of an entire country, small mistakes or personal flaws become everyone else's problem. This list also featured a lot of people who were just fine, characters I don't hate but really can't call good rulers, or alternatively, people like Elsa or the Emperor who are a mix of good and bad. To be clear, these people shouldn't be in charge either. Mediocre rulers shouldn't be given power just because of who their parents were. A vast majority of the kings, queens, princes, and princesses on this list do not deserve to be in charge. I don't like the monarchy. I find the idea disgusting. And I have hammered that idea in to an obnoxious degree. I don't really have much more to say. Hold on, let me think of the conclusion. Oh, you know how I said the king shouldn't have the right to kill people, and that a system that allows an authority figure that power will inevitably become authoritarian and brutal? Well, democratically elected leaders also have the ability to kill people and are often more deadly than any king. Maybe those positions of power shouldn't exist either. Maybe power structures in general are a bad idea. I'm not going to say anything more because the FBI gets really mad when you threaten to guillotine actual people instead of cartoon characters, but, you know, something to think about. Free Palestine. Anyway, it's been 3 hours. I'm tired. You're tired. It's Christmas, unless you don't celebrate Christmas. I mean, it's still that date even if you don't. But the point is, thank you for watching. I have more videos planned for next year that will almost certainly spiral into madness, just like this one did, and hope you'll all be there to listen to me ramble.